Did you ever hear of Satanism, the worship of the devil, of evil? Approaching is the great modern priest of that ancient cult. And tonight, dark of the moon, the rites of Lucifer are celebrated.
You've got to do something. You've got to save my daughter's life.
Everyone I touch is poisoned.
I want you should change my face.
This is the nebula in Andromeda.
That is fascinating, my dear.
More power than man has ever possessed.
You monster. You will live in this place forever and ever.
The sinister hand of science dares a new and dangerous experiment. Into the body of a gentle scholar is grafted the brain of a criminal, and a new and deadly monster is born.
Yes, y'all, it's going down right now. Episode 226 of the 22 Shots of Moodz and Horror podcast is coming at you live and direct with my brother, the Mexicant, also known as JP. And yet again, back in the house, we have the man, the myth, the legend, with the replicated Joe Pesci voice, the one and only Dave See Ya Later from the Exploding Heads Horror Podcast. And of course, I'd be your host, the ill-mented funky child that's straight going buck wild and always forever the toxic offender, Moodz. Yeah. What's going on, dudes?
What's up?
Yo.
Dave, this is like a record for you. It's like 3 shows in a row.
Oh, it's going to be about to be 4.
It's going to be 4, yeah.
Actually, it is going to be 4 in a row, yeah.
Is this the only time we've ever recorded 2 shows in 1 week? Because we're about to.
No, we've done it before.
Shots.
We've actually this actually happened once before. We recorded and then we did. I think it was like a special show on a Friday too. It's definitely happened once before. So, but
yeah,
I think I'm pretty much all ready to go on the 94. I just want to. I am done. I'm done with watching movies.
I have 12 more.
I mean, I'm going to watch 3 more. Because I've really been putting off Mary Shelley's Frankenstein because I didn't want to buy it. And I only have a full screen DVD. So I'm like, I don't know. I kind of wanted to watch it in the best quality to maybe have the best viewing of it because I've never really been the biggest fan of the movie. You know, I've always thought it was kind of an oddball, which is interesting.
I just finished the book.
Yeah.
And like I've seen that version before. The 94 version, and I never really cared for it, but like after reading the book, my memory of it, like it's definitely the closest adaptation we've had of Frankenstein, I think. So maybe I'll appreciate it a little bit more because the book is vastly different than the original 30s Frankenstein film.
Mm-hmm.
It's so different. Like I didn't expect it to be that different. It's a good book, but it's completely different from that film. I like the film more.
Yeah, I've just seen so many adaptations of Frankenstein over the year, and that was the one that always kind of stood out to me as being one that I never really cared for that much. You know, I never had any ambition to go back to it. You know,
the big thing about the book is like there's an entire section of the book that's from the monster's perspective with him talking.
Right.
And like I feel like that doesn't translate to film very well. It just doesn't work as well. You know what I mean? Whereas like in the original film, it's more about like
they made him silent in the first film.
Yeah.
Right. He doesn't even talk. So that's a big.
I think that's just what we're accustomed to is what it is. I think because so many years of seeing Frankenstein's monster portrayed this way, and I've never seen Mary Shelley's Frankenstein until now. I'm doing it for 94. It's a first time watch. So, but just hearing you say that, I'm thinking, we're just so accustomed to Frankenstein's monster being portrayed that way because of the 31 movie. You know what I mean? So it's like maybe if they had him talk from the beginning, it wouldn't be such an oddball thing to see now. Right. It's just, you know how it is. We're just accustomed to it. But for 94, I'll say one thing. I'm done. And yesterday, for the first time ever, I watched the last thing. I saved it for the end. I watched The Stand, start to finish in one sitting, the whole fucking 6 hours. So that was something.
I've never done that. I've only watched it.
I did that too, actually. And is your opinion
Man, it's
on
interesting?
Is your opinion on The Stand like very similar to ours, where the first half of the movie is a lot better than the second half?
Yes, but I will say this. I enjoyed it more watching it in one sitting than I have watching it in installments.
Yeah,
really.
So I have a better appreciation for the movie. But of course, you know what you're going into with something like that. Just like it, especially the miniseries, sitting down and watching. Although you could say the same thing for the two movies. If you watch them all back to back, you know that it's top heavy. You know that you're going to see most of the horror in the beginning. Because I mean, let's face it, the first act of The Stand is fantastic. Like you know,
it's the most interesting stuff. It's the most interesting part.
It's the play.
Yeah,
it is kicking it off. So that's always the best stuff. And everyone pretty much would agree, just like with it, that the climax and some of the last act is a little to be desired. But once you know that going into it, I don't know. It's like when you've done it a couple of times, and I'm already expecting to kind of be a little let down because it starts off so well. Seeing it in one sitting, I don't know. It was just a better experience, is all I can say. But yeah, 6
Interesting.
hours.
Yeah, that's a hike. I've watched Storm of the Century in one sitting, and
yeah.
I've watched it in one sitting many times. I've never watched the new version of it, the two films back to back. That would probably be pretty
I'd like
fun.
to.
Yeah, I've actually been wanting to do that myself. I've seen the first one a few times. I've only seen the second one, I think, twice, or the second part. But yeah, I should actually put those together one time and watch them. See how it kind of works as a whole.
Yeah. There was rumors that like a one big cut of the movie was going to come out, but it still hasn't. I think that would be awesome.
Oh, I mean, I guess they kind of. Well, I mean, I guess not really, but you know that website Stinky Tuna.
Yeah, it's gone now. They shut it down.
Oh, well, that doesn't really surprise me, anyways. But anyways, I noticed. I was actually just watching a guy's video this morning, and he had picked up a Stinky Tuna release of Kill Bill. Of Tarantino's Kill Bill, and it's basically the version that
Bloody Affair.
Yeah, it's the whole Bloody Affair version. So it has the two
it.
parts together, and I believe the big fight samurai scene is in color in that too. Actually,
it is.
So I was like, that'd be kind of interesting to watch it because I would put a different spin on it right there. And then having the whole thing as, like a 4-hour film would be pretty interesting. So I kind of like what Stinky Tuna was doing, even though it's completely not legal. But I did like the fact that they were doing the Netflix films that weren't getting physical releases. They were putting that's how they started out, I think, is they were doing those exclusive Netflix films and putting them out on physical copies for people that were collectors. And I like that idea. And I'm like, you know what? And I'm just actually quite surprised that Netflix hasn't really jumped on that bandwagon of, even press, like you could start your own little pressing company and press up some shit, because there's been a bunch of movies over the years on Netflix where I'm like, really? Like I would totally, and I'm that person right now. And I was thinking about this when I was watching his video going, I would really like to get the Fear Street trilogy. And I actually know, I don't know if you guys ever watched Simon Explosive Action from YouTube, but he's really good at, making his own little versions and stuff. So he got the movies and he made his own like box set of the Fear Street movies, and it looked fucking like store-bought. It's really, really well put together. He's really good at that shit. And I was like, damn, dude, that looks really damn cool. But that's a great example of something that I would purchase. I would purchase that Fear Street trilogy because I really enjoyed the shit out of that. And I think it's worthy of getting a physical release. And then what was that movie a few years ago that came on Netflix? The one in the forest?
The Ritual?
The Ritual. Fuck yeah, man. That movie was fantastic. And that was another exclusive Netflix film that never got a physical release, at least in North America. I think it had a DVD release somewhere in the UK or something like that, or some weird release. But that's another one that is eluding my collection because I really enjoyed it. I watched that on Netflix a couple times.
Great.
It's a good movie, man.
What about The Invitation? That was only on Netflix too.
Man. No, The Invitation came out on Draft House.
Yeah. That Invitation.
Like right away though? Or did it take a year or so?
It came out on Draft House before Netflix, I think.
Yeah, it was on Blu-ray before,
Yeah,
that's a good
But Draft House is like such a smaller label that like you're not going to see it in any stores or anything probably.
At the Alamo in Texas, they had all their movies in a vending machine. It was literally Draft House Blu-rays in a vending machine. So you just, because I remember Jason Lloyd was there and he bought a bunch of fucking Draft House films. And I was like, and he's like, I got them out of the vending machine. I burst out laughing. I'm like, why the fuck doesn't more people sell their shit in vending machines? It's so handy.
It was cool. Yeah, I saw pictures of it. It was dope. Yeah. Miss 45 in there and shit.
Yeah.
Waking Friday.
It's kind of like a Redbox, if you think about it, except you're not renting them, you're buying them.
Right.
On a machine, you could
Well, I mean,
put money in and buy them.
I mean, if you've ever been in an airport, man, you can literally buy $500 Bose headphones in a vending machine in the airport.
But it is frustrating with Netflix because they just don't put a lot of their stuff on Blu-ray. In fact, I actually just picked up The Haunting of Bly Manor and The Haunting of Hill House. It came in a double pack Blu-ray, and I was shocked that they even existed because Netflix is so bad at putting out their films on physical. Like, I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, dude, like, I'm gonna have to buy a bootleg of Texas Chainsaw because, like, I can't not have one of the Texas Chainsaw films in my collection,
dude.
And I doubt they're gonna put it out.
Sadly, that's the future, and I'll tell you this: Netflix, they're already in debt, or they have been, as people have known. I think that they don't have any confidence in physical media. If they're the ones that revolutionize the streaming game and they're losing money, and they take a look around and they see that more and more people are getting out of the physical media game, I don't think they want to take the gamble. And dude, I was in a class the other day for work in Binghamton, New York, about a 3-hour drive, and they were talking about, I work for the power company, and they were talking about when the power goes off and how certain things can be damaged when the power goes off, different tools and stuff. And it was so matter of fact the way this guy was talking about things, but he was saying your television could be damaged, this and that, just talking about different things. And then he goes Blu-ray DVD player, and he goes some things from the past, he says. So this is just a normal dude, and nobody even.
Here's the thing about
no one even questioned that. A thing of the past, it's like
right. It's fucked up.
Netflix is such a big company that if they release a title and it sells 10,000 units, like, that's garbage for them. Like, that, it's not even worth it.
Right.
But like if Vinegar Syndrome releases a title and it sells 10,000 units, that's a home run. You know what I mean? So it's like a matter of perspective. Netflix doesn't have. They're just too big to even care. Like, it's not gonna. It's gonna be pennies to them. You know what I mean? So that's the problem with them. But it just sucks that they own the exclusive rights to a lot of these films. Like, there was so much Hush, most of Flanagan's stuff.
Right. It's so interesting though too, because when you look at somebody like Charles Band's Full Moon, he's willing to give you like 10 free Blu-rays to sign up for the streaming. He's giving away the free physical media just to get the streaming. Yeah. I know. I need to do. I'm hoping I can do that too, because there's actually some of the back Blu-rays that I would like to get, and another streaming service is fine.
They kind of tricked me a bit. I talk about this in my update. They made it seem like you could pick any 10 Blu-rays from their website, but it is not all that. It does not have their.
It's all the older titles. Yeah.
No, there's some newer stuff on there too, but it's like a selection, and they actually screwed me over because I picked my 10, and I get them, and there's only 9, and they say this one's out of stock, but they never sent it or replaced it or gave me a different copy, so I ended up with only 9.
That's so Charles Band. I mean, they basically could have said 4 or 5 are out of stock. Sorry, bro.
Yeah.
Luck of the draw. Right. maybe you should have went with this other title.
I will say before.
You should have went with an extra copy of Pet Shop, because that movie's awesome.
No, Pet Shop sucks.
Pet Shop is fucking. I watched it last night. It's terrible.
It was one of the better titles in there. It was Demonic Toys that they didn't have.
Oh.
So I was bummed about that. But the thing about Full Moon and Charles Band and stuff is, like, I have actually ordered stuff and got extra shit in my packages before. Like, I remember back in the day, I bought the Puppet Master box set. Like the original DVD set. I think it had up to Retro Puppet Master in it.
The first,
and then the newest one had it was first 7, I think.
First 7.
The newest one had just come out, which was Axis of Evil, and I bought that as well. So I didn't buy the Legacy, and they just threw it in. They just threw it in, and I thought that was really cool. Because I had 1 through 7 and then 9, and they're like, "Well, you gotta have 8," and they just threw in 8 too, which Legacy sucks. But
I was gonna say, because they can't even give it away.
Right. They're giving it away because no one's buying that shit. Yeah.
Right.
Brutal, man. Brutal.
I have a love-hate relationship with Full Moon.
I don't think there's 10 Full Moon movies I would want. I'd have to sit down and look, to be honest.
There's definitely
That's a very-
Honestly, man, you know what's actually kind of funny about Full Moon?
I gotta
Like
look.
1994 was like the most prolific year for
Oh my
releases they
God.
ever had. They released almost 10 films in 1994, and we just happened to be covering that year. But you know, honestly, man, you know, besides like the early Full Moon stuff, like the 80s, you know, before it became Full Moon.
Empire shit.
Yeah, when it was all Empire, like that's all really cool and stuff. And I mean, you can kind of consider it still Charles Band. But then when it goes to Full Moon, I think with Puppet Master, I believe was like the first release until, you know, like 89 to about like 98, 99 was a pretty good era. There's like a 10-year era of Full Moon that's like, it's a quality era, and then it just switches. It's like the Millennium hits, and all of a sudden it's like, bro, we're just going to cut budgets by like 97% and not give a fuck about anything. And then they start putting out like Demonic Toys 2 with like the worst CG.
Which was
and
horrible.
like fucking,
horrible
but
movie.
that was the quality that they just went to, and it was like, bro, like the first 4 or 5 years after like 99 was this era of Full Moon that was so disturbing. It was like, what are we getting
I
here?
think that,
Like,
when you have like Full Moon, I think up until about like 95, you have like a very solid, and then you have a couple solid after 90, 95. And then, like you said, it goes downhill. The early stuff was backed by Paramount, so they had Paramount budgets, like with Puppet Master and stuff like that. So that's why a lot of the like 89 to like maybe like 92, 93, you had much stronger movies because they had bigger budgets.
yeah, and then you get 94 where they, instead of making Transfers 4, they make Transfers 4 and 5 on the same budget, and it shows. Right? That's what they did. Yeah.
Right.
You know what I think it is? You know what I think the reason is? This is just a theory, but I think that they were making a lot of movies for rental shops.
Oh,
they weren't
100%.
necessarily selling.
That's
them
all
to
they were
us, and
doing.
it was dying,
That's
right?
all they were doing.
It was dying out. It was dying out by then.
Well, Charles Band was smart.
listened-
Charles Band was smart. He recognized that the consumer rented and bought movies based on artworks, right? So that's why they used to develop movies based on artworks first. And then when it came into the video era, it was like, well, what's going to make us, you know, have a shitload of sales or rentals and stuff was this awesome artwork. They didn't give a fuck about the movies, man. It wasn't even about the movies at all.
I remember hearing Charles Band talk, and Charles Band, a documentary would be good on Charles Band because he really truly was a pioneer in the video store era. Like he
was.
like did amazing things. Like before even Full Moon with Wizard Video and stuff, like it was insane the stuff that he pulled off. He even like was one of the first people to create like the big boxes and stuff. Because in consumers' minds, this box is like way bigger. It must be better, you know, until you realized it wasn't. But at the time, you know, you'd see why is this one's box so much bigger?
It wasn't
Like,
even
has to be a
better.
movie
It was
or
more
something.
marketable because it was bigger. It was just the idea of seeing that artwork in a bigger format. That's all it was.
Right.
Like he
That
recognized
too,
that
like-
having a bigger, it's just bigger is better. I mean, that's what she said, right?
But I remember
and
him
a white
talking.
shell, you know.
Yeah. I remember
Like
him
porn.
talking about Killjoy specifically, where he went to Blockbuster with a poster of Killjoy. There was no movie. And he's like, yeah, I got this new movie. It's called Killjoy. And had the poster with the clown on it. And they're like, all right, we'll take 150,000 units. And the movie wasn't even made. There was no script. It was nothing. And they wanted it in like 6 weeks or something. So he had to go make this movie in like 6 weeks and get it to Blockbuster. So like just stuff like that was, you know, granted not the most quality shit in the world, but at the
how
same
disappointed?
time, it's kind of impressive.
How disappointed would you have been if you ordered like a couple hundred copies to your store or whatever, and then you watch Killjoy? You're like, oh lordy, this is horrible. That's one of the weirdest franchises.
It's a bad movie. It's a very bad movie.
You know, who would have ever thought that those movies would have got better as they went along? Like part 2 is better than 1, part 3 is better than 2,
is better than 2,
and then 4
is better than 3.
It's like the weirdest thing. It's like Full Moon went ass backwards on that. Usually their production goes downhill, but this one went up.
Yeah, it really did. Like Killjoy 4 is so much better than part 1, but it really is. Each one got better.
They really did. It's the weirdest franchise. Yeah.
It's like you never see a franchise go in reverse like that.
Is there a 5th Killjoy? Because the Psycho Circus, that was the 4th one, right?
Wasn't there a Killjoy Goes to Hell?
Oh yeah, Psycho Circus is the 4th one, and then
no. Killjoy Goes to Hell is the 4th one. I've never seen Psycho Circus. That's the 5th one.
Okay, that is the 5th one. Okay, I couldn't remember. Yeah, I've never seen that one either. I think it was only
wasn't it exclusive on the streaming when it came out, and they never pressed it up? Like, there's no physical copy for it?
I have no clue.
Yeah, I think it was an exclusive, and there's no physical copy, which is strange, because Ban usually does press up his movies. So that's interesting.
All I know is I was pissed off because, and I'm not a fan of the movie, but it is my franchise. But I remember that Killjoy Goes to Hell was out on Blu-ray before fucking Jason Goes to Hell, and I was like, how the fuck is this even possible? I was like, how is this possible?
Well, that's Charles Band for you.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, there's some like weird. I was like looking at like I was doing a DVD update recently. And last night I recorded it, and I had picked up Inglourious Bastards on 4K, and I was like, how is Tarantino's films not better, like treated better, right? Like,
well, that's notoriously a bad one, Inglourious Bastards.
The 4K, you mean?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it yet, but I just mean in general, like, he's probably like one of the best, if not the best, filmmaker of our generation. Like, why are there not these super awesome special edition? Like, why do you have to get a bootleg of the Kill Bill cut? Like, why is it not more? Why isn't he more celebrated?
They're big studio catalog titles. Weird. They're big studio catalog titles. They own the rights to those. They don't give a fuck about the the special releases and stuff. Like, I mean, look,
you see other filmmakers get these awesome editions and stuff. It just feels like Tarantino's films don't really get that.
No, they never had really any good editions. I would love to see like a Grindhouse, like an amazing edition where, like, I have them separately. Like, I have the double feature one with that has the the trailers in between and stuff you can watch as the Grindhouse mode, like how you saw it in the theater, which are the shorter versions of the movies, and then I have them individually, which is the full length director's cut, which I actually like better because it's just, especially Death Proof, it's just so much more to Death Proof, but it would be nice to have a box set with like features and a whole pile of shit. Like, you could really do a lot with his films. Like, they're very marketable.
We were talking about this. I have the answer. First of all, I think I may have been wrong. I might have spoke out of turn about Inglourious Bad. I looked it up on Blu-ray.com, and there is one of them. I thought that was wrong. I could be wrong, but it came out in 2009. But we were talking about this a few episodes ago on Exploding Heads, and Christian said, he goes, I think what they're planning to do, because he always said he's going to do 10 movies. After his 10th movie comes out, they're going to probably come out with a fucking Quentin box set of his whole fucking library of 10 movies, and that's when they'll come out with all the bells and whistles and do everything.
Well, I hope
right.
They do.
Just a theory, but we were talking about the same thing. So maybe that's what they're doing.
Well, it's very weird because I think like one of the problems too is like most of his films were done with the Weinstein Company, and obviously that doesn't exist anymore. So I'm not sure where the rights went to everything, but I also
somebody has the rights. It doesn't really matter, but somebody definitely. I mean, that's a vast catalog.
I don't know if they're like
it's worth a lot of money.
Now. I don't know if like one studio has them now.
Right.
But also they just never really the Weinstein Company never really did great editions.
No, they didn't care.
With.
They didn't care about that shit. No.
Right.
They were too busy raping women. Well,
one of them at least.
Just one. Right.
Why put out special editions when you could just rape? I mean,
I would love a 4K box set of Tarantino's work. I mean, there's so much to do with it too. And like, I don't know, I'm sure you guys have listened to Tarantino talk, but I can listen to that dude talk forever. Like, I can he is one of the most interesting people to listen to.
There's been like late nights where I will Google Tarantino interviews, and I love when he starts talking about like shit that is like very specific to himself. Like, he's talking about like Aussie films, and then he'll just like break down all this shit, and you're just like, dude. And I specifically I knew that there was an interview where he was talking about Aussie films, and it was like Next to Kin and shit like that. He always vouched for that film and stuff. And I was just like, man, this is one of the reasons why I love fucking Aussie films. Cause like, he has that same passion that I do. Like, just to hear him talk about all these type of films, I'm just like, oh, great, man. But he really does break down shit and like found those gems. Like, he was the first person that was talking about Memories of Murder, from years and years ago. What was his favorite?
Oh, yeah.
Top 25 movies since when he started his career. So it was like 1991 or whatever it was with Reservoir Dogs. So from the time he started his career for the last 25 years, his top 25 films of that era. And Memories of Murder was one of them. Never seen it. And then, of course, we have seen it since a couple times, and it's like phenomenal. But like, that's the type of movies that he was finding before they even had releases. Yeah. Like,
there was so many interesting titles on that list, like very wide range of different types of films. But it's awesome. I love hearing him talk. And I had watched this video recently that a YouTuber did. It's like, dude, YouTube videos are getting so good. Like certain ones, that they are like fucking they're like feature-length documentaries that could play in a theater or something.
Yeah.
Like,
I watch them a lot.
It's insane what people are doing. But there was this great 3-part documentary on Tarantino's work, and it was phenomenal. Like I watched all like 3 hours of it at work. And they took like all these clips from him from different years. Like they went in chronological order of his whole career and like talked about there was actually a situation where he was on like the Howard Stern show and he was talking about this, but when he had finished the Django, I believe it was supposed to premiere at like this theater in Hollywood, which was like it was like important to him. And like Disney had blocked it off for Star Wars or something, but he had already reserved the dates. But Disney, with their like power hand, pushed him out, and he was like
power glove that
shit, dude. He was like flipping shit, and he's like, "This is such bullshit." And and it's just, I love how unfiltered he is too. Like when an interviewer will start asking him like some dumb question, like, "What? Like, do you think violence in movies causes violence in real life?" And he gets all pissed off, and he's like, "I answered this question 20 years ago. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it." You know?
Yeah.
He's like,
I get that reaction though.
Career.
I get that reaction, man, because it gets super irritating when you're like, okay, it's such a generic question. And you're like, bro, I've answered this before.
He's talked about that so many times in 20 years,
Yeah.
But I love his films. I love all of his films. I would love to see more, like 4Ks. Really, I mean, I want 4K of Reservoir Dogs, like Pulp Fiction, like Kill Bill. Damn it. It's ridiculous. Like I want to see these shits on 4K. But I love Tarantino's work, dude. I'm very curious to see what his last film is. I disagree with his mentality of wanting to quit.
He's not going to.
I hope he does. I hope he. As much as I love everything, I love when somebody says they're going to stop at a certain time and just retires and then actually sticks to their fucking guns, because nobody does.
No,
his whole reason for wanting to quit, right?
Musicians, anybody, just for someone to sit back and be the guy. I'm going to start here and I'm going to end here. I'm going to have 10 feature lengths and then I'm done. I think it's possible because how long he's taking to do it, and I really hope
think it's possible too.
He'll produce and write still. He'll do. I
just think that some people, like, if you look at Quentin Tarantino, hear him talk, his whole existence is cinema. Like. Yeah. What is he without that? You know what I mean? And I feel like when people, it's the same thing like with like Eminem. Like the dude's never gonna quit. He's gonna die rapping. You know what I mean? Because that's what he did. That's like all he cares about. So I think even if Quentin tries to step away, it's gonna pull him back in because that's what he does. But he might quit. His reason is that he doesn't want to go past his prime. But my response to that is like, dude, you're fucking Quentin Tarantino, bro. Like. Why do you think that you have a past your prime?
Everybody does.
But the thing is with Tarantino,
that's hasn't fallen off. Even Scorsese can't do anything like he used to. Everybody knows it.
See, Tarantino's been on this like high plane for so long. I feel like he's never really faltered too bad.
I don't
or
think
too
he's
far
faltered at all.
And it is a hard thing to do. I mean, he's been making movies for 30 years. He's been pretty much on top of his game and stuff. I mean, it could be an idea thing too, but he has this mentality of is like, why keep making movies just to stay relevant when you could make high quality movies, and make less of them. It's quality over.
Movies.
It is quality over quantity.
Planned out 100%.
It's like quality over quantity.
He is so detailed in his filmmaking, you know what I mean? And that's why his films are so good.
Well, you look at,
but I think it takes a lot out of him each time.
I agree.
Well, it's also his mentality when he directs movies though too, because he's such a perfectionist. Like if you've ever heard stories about people that have acted on Quentin Tarantino movies, he doesn't allow people to like ad lib and kind of interpret the the dialogue and stuff. When Tarantino writes dialogue for you, you have to say it word for word. He's not like one of those directors where it's just kind of like, okay, here's your lines. Do it how you want to. If you feel like a word here and there is not how it, interpret it. He's not like that, man. Right. People are like, fuck, man. Like, you have to say it line for line.
Instances where he has let people change stuff, but it's usually like very, like they have to like come with like a good argument. You know what I mean? Like, I remember Sam Jackson in Pulp Fiction actually changed some of that stuff, like his big speech.
Right.
But he must have came with some good stuff, But Tarantino, I know he was talking about his last film being this Star Trek sequel. Like, I do not want that. Please no. Like, make another one.
Kill Bill 3.
I know, right? I would love a Kill Bill 3.
No, I want the horror
he said
movie.
he was going to do it.
I want the horror film.
Yep.
I want to see what he's going to
do.
do because he's not going to make a straight up fucking horror. It's going to incorporate multiple genres. It's going to be totally different, and I think it would be very unique because he hasn't done anything like that. I mean, he's been doing shit differently for so long. Why not try and attempt this? I think that's where he should go.
I would also like to see if he's going to quit filmmaking, maybe he could go into acting more because he's really good. Like he does a good job in everything I've seen him in, and I mean,
he's good in From Dusk Till Dawn.
Amazing,
yeah.
He's great.
But you know why? But you know why he's good in that role, though, man? Because he wrote his own dialogue, and he wasn't directing himself. It was Rodriguez, and Rodriguez is like one of those directors. Is like, well, Quentin, do what the fuck you want to do. So he just let him. He let Tarantino
part.
do what he wanted to do in that role. So it's like, did it
Well,
right.
the thing is, he can't play a normal person. He has to be typecast as a fucking zany individual. That's what
he got to be
is.
eccentric. Yeah,
he has to be.
So he has to
eccentric.
play himself in every movie then.
Word.
right. Yeah,
Right. That's just it.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, but he would end up becoming a caricature. I don't think he'd want to do that too many times.
Yeah.
True.
I don't know. What do I know what he thinks?
Right.
It's going to be interesting. I hope he stops at 10 and then just writes. Why not write? Why not have guys his writing is great. Why not have other people adapt his writing? That's fine with me. Stephen King just writes. People adapt his stuff, some better than others, but still, right.
Well, he tried the directing thing one time, and it didn't really work out so well. He I think he still hates that movie, but I personally don't. I love Maximum Overdrive.
He apologized for Maximum Overdrive recently.
He makes it sound like it must have been just the experience that he had while doing that, because like when you theoretically look at that movie, it's not even that bad. It's not that bad of a movie. It really isn't. People shit on that because Stephen King doesn't like the movie and stuff, and I get that. But at the same time, when you break it down, it's not actually a horrible movie at all. It's actually quite fucking entertaining. First of all, it's got Emilio Estevez in it. You're already winning. You're Charlie Sheen in that shit already with Emilio. You're winning. So, I don't know, man. And the soundtrack is awesome.
I feel like he
AC/DC, come on.
He picked the wrong film to do first. Because at that time,
it's a fucking stupid idea.
Movies.
The whole idea of Maximum Overdrive is so stupid, but it works so well because it's so dumb. Right? It's just like the reason why everything's coming alive is just like it's doesn't really give you a lot of backstory, and it's just like this is what's happening. But
it's just a comet passing.
Yeah, that's all it is.
It's a sci-fi movie
somehow
from the 50s.
It's like animated. I shouldn't even say reanimated. It animates like all this electronics, and it's. I like the idea.
And then it just stops when the comet passes.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Alien Forces, man. It's got to be Alien Forces.
I like it.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
I don't like the movie, but I like
the trailer's hilarious because it's got Stephen King in the trailer.
Bragging.
He's like, for years, people have been doing my work. He's like, well, if you want to do it right, do it yourself.
Right.
And it's so ridiculous.
I love that. That's so good. Man, but you're so right about YouTube videos being so well done now. Like the production value on certain channels now is ridiculous. Like I'm sub to this one guy's channel. I can't remember what his channel's called, but he only makes videos about MF Doom. And the way he breaks down things, they're like short documentaries every time, and
it feels like you're watching a 30 for 30 or something.
It does, man, and it's so
fucking dog
because he spends his videos are so far in between because he researches and edits and he writes all the it's all scripted. It's really really well done. I'm like, bro, I'll shoot a video and just be like, put an intro on the front and fucking and fade out the end.
These especially the people that are doing these mini docs. The talent level is just insane. I watched one on Scorsese the other day too that was amazing. Actually, it was the same guy that did the Tarantino one. But yeah, you'll find these channels and you'll just be that channel only had 10,000 subs or 20,000 subs or something. This channel's got to blow up eventually because the amount of like these guys are doing some amazing work on YouTube. It's insane.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I'm still old school. I'm still making videos very similar to how I did when I started. But
yeah,
that's just me. That's just my personality, man. I'm like, whatever.
These guys are like most likely like filmmakers.
Oh,
that
absolutely.
Are, like,
I mean, the thing is, though, like, if I wanted to make a video like a little bit more high production, I probably could. It just takes the time. It really does just take the time. Like, I mean, I've spent hours and hours and hours editing marathons and doing all that type of shit. Like, you could take it one step further and then, go from there too. But,
right.
I mean, like, what's the point, man? What's the point? Right. Like, I mean, I don't need to get too fancy. And that's one thing sometimes in videos. Like, I like when it's documentary style and people go over the top and kind of really have a nice, a visual, and it's really high production. I like that. But when you're like watching certain videos and they're like overproduced, you're like, what are you doing this for? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to overproduce my update and like insert all this shit and like have all this crazy graphics and shit. I'm like, bro, I got Candyman fucking Day of the Dead 3 here. Day of the Dead. Like fucking all this type of graphics and shit. Fuck that. But I gotta say, man, like, coming into doing this show today, man, I'm super, super fucking nervous. Not about doing this show. I don't really get nervous. I don't know if you guys ever get like, before you record and stuff. Do you ever get
just
like...
excited.
Is it because the Leafs game?
Yeah, dude, I've been freaking out all weekend. Dude. So we've been super busy this whole weekend. We're doing a bunch of shit around the house. We just had a lot of things going on. It's kind of like, not spring, but it's just, we're busy. So it was nice because it was keeping my mind off the Leafs playing tonight. As you guys know, the Leafs have lost the last 6 years in a row in the first round. And
in brutal fashion.
In some of those rounds, we were...
heartbreaking fashion.
We lost game 7 up 3 goals in the third period. We lost to the Montreal last year up 3 games to 1. Like, there's been these years where it's just like... mind blowing.
Yeah, the Leafs has had
they're like a Buffalo team now.
Rough road.
Dude. But, I mean, this year is interesting because... The Leafs
gotta get out of the
are
first
legit
round,
good, but it sucks because the way they structure the playoffs now, it's like it's not done by rankings, and we should be playing someone that's not as good as the Stanley Cup champions of the last 2 years. For fuck's sakes, get to play Tampa.
You got a rough first draw, man.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, Tampa Bay is not as good as they were the last couple of years, but I still fear Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the NHL, and he's going to win you games. Even if Tampa Bay scores 2 goals, that might be enough. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're facing the Leafs who scored nobody scores more goals in the NHL than the Leafs. But goaltending wins you series and cups, and that's why Vasilevsky has done it the last couple of years. I'm like, fuck, are you serious, dude? This could again be detrimental to the Leafs' health.
It's very weird how they do the playoffs because it's split in the Atlantic and the Metropolitan.
They're actually talking about going back to the ranking system for next year because so many analysts have been complaining about these first rounds. Like, you have Toronto and Tampa Bay playing in the first round. That could be a conference final, but it's not. Right. It's stupid.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so, it is weird how they do it with because they do like the 2 versus 3 seed, but they should just have it 1 through 8 ranked, and 1 plays 8, and 2 plays 7.
Yeah, that's the way they used to do it.
Supposed to be.
That's the way they used to do it.
But they don't combine the Atlantic and the Metropolitan in the East, which is annoying. But the problem is like sometimes you have the wild cards. There'll be 2 from the Atlantic or something. It's just it's very messy. It does make for some amazing first round games though, because you have like these rivalries like in the first round. Like we got Rangers again, and I don't know. I was like very confident on the Penguins like a couple months ago when we were winning like 18 games in a row and shit. And then like now it's been rough, but I'm hoping playoffs are a different breed too.
Oh, it's back to ground zero, man. It doesn't even matter at this point what happened in the season. Matthews scored 60 goals. Doesn't matter. I mean, it nothing matters right now, man. And that's the way I look at it too. And I'm like, it's going to come down to goaltending, which is our biggest issue. We cannot. We score a lot of goals, put it that way, but it's the goaltending. And, Campbell hasn't been 100% since the All-Star break. He's been hurt a couple times, and our backup, he's played like 10 games in NHL. Like, it's crazy, right?
Right.
Like, our goaltending situation is the scariest thing for us right now because we're going to have to split time between them two because both of them just can't play every single night. It's fucking crazy, dude. So if we're not scoring 5 goals a game, I'm be a little bit worried here, man.
Playoffs, man. Ride the hot goalie. That's what playoffs are every fucking year.
Yeah,
ride the hot.
And we don't have one right now. Tristan Jarry isn't even playing.
A lot of goalies are fucking actually Anderson from Carolina. He's out. Carolina finished 3rd overall. Leafs were 4th. Anderson's fucking hurt. He's not even. Actually, they've lost both their goalies. Their 1 and 2s are gone for the playoffs. That's fucking crazy. To score 118 points in the season when I think Leafs at 117 and not even have your goalies playing? Fuck.
I actually wouldn't be surprised if Boston wins that.
Oh, Boston is a playoff team, man. They're just built like one. The scariest team in the NHL right now is the Flames, though, from the Western Conference, man. That team is built to win. They're a total playoff team. They got the goaltending. They have the scoring. They have the grit. Fuck, man. They're going to be tough. They are going to be
tough. I'm never super keen. I never really follow the West too closely, so I don't know a lot of West stuff.
Well, just put it this way.
See, this is what I'm thinking. The West. Moodz, I got to ask you this. You're on the West, and I noticed that all your teams are on the East Coast. Unless, who's your basketball team?
Toronto.
The Raptors.
So how about now? Wait a minute. So you're on the West, and all your guys are on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Is it just a conscious choice, or it just so happened to be you gravitated towards these teams?
That's just.
I've always wondered.
I became a Leafs fan in the '80s. I have no idea. Well, the reason why I became a Leafs fan is because my uncle was a huge Leafs fan, and not even thinking about not even thinking about geographics at all. And
right, yeah.
But you got to remember, when I became a Leafs fan, probably in 87, whatever it was, I was 7. The Canucks in the 80s were the worst team ever. They were legitimately the worst franchise in the NHL. So, so anyways, I gravitated towards them, and then baseball. It was we only had 2 baseball teams in Canada, which was the
Expos and the fucking Jays, right?
Right, and I just gravitated towards the Jays because they were always on TV. We always got the feeds over here for the Jays and stuff. So I became huge George Bell fan back in the 80s.
Oh wow!
Right, and so I've been a Jays fan my entire life, and then it's funny because people ask me how I became a Raptors fan because I lived in Vancouver when the Grizzlies actually were there. And I remember going to the very first Grizzlies game I ever went to actually was against the Lakers, and I got to see Shaq and Kobe play, which was really cool.
Wow.
And so that was kind of a cool memory. And but I was a Raptors fan. It was weird because I wasn't passing up the ticket. The tickets were cheap, dude. You could go to games for $10. And get decent. It was cheap, man. Fucking crazy cheap. So even as a starving student, I could, even afford that. But yeah, I was a Raptors fan. And
fucking Vince Carter, remember that shit?
And the Bills, the Bills,
off.
Yeah, right.
And
the Bills, I became a fan of the Bills because my best friend, who's passed away now, he was, oddly enough, a 49ers fan, but loved the Bills, though, too. And his older brother was a huge Bills fan. So we used to sit around, and his brother, we'd always get these games and somehow get them on satellite. If they weren't playing, we'd somehow be able to watch the games. And then it just meant a lot to me. We're watching the Bills game. And that was again in the late 80s. And then they went on that 4 Super Bowl loss run, which was devastating as shit. But
it may have been devastating, but still, at each one, you didn't know they were going to lose.
No.
So it was pretty amazing run there too.
Oh, fuck.
It was exciting, but disappointing at the same time. So how about this? Okay, do you prefer East Coast rap? You must, because you're old school like me.
Yeah, it's funny because I grew up listening to mostly East Coast because Public Enemy got me into hip hop in '88, and of course New York group. But and it just flourished from there. I was listening to everything from Public Enemy to it didn't matter EPMD. It really did anything from the East Coast kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
I mean, the West Coast stuff was starting to pop at that time in '88 because NWA obviously was breaking. I was straight out of Compton. It was making huge moves.
Yep.
But I gravitated towards obviously the East Coast was a big thing. But I wasn't really hugely into gangster music per se. I loved Ice Cube. I love the Ghetto Boys. I love Scarf. I still listen to that stuff. But on the West Coast tip, I became a huge Souls of Mischief fan and Dell. I love the Higher Crew, which was more East Coast oriented West Coast music, right? It was all conscious. It was all stuff like that. But, Tribe Called Quest and Native Tongues is all my favorite shit. Tribe's my favorite group. De La Soul, Jungle Brothers, all that type of stuff is what I listened to growing up. And then that's why I became a fan of and I always used to call hieroglyphics the West Coast Native Tongues because that's what it was. It was very, very similar, right? and Black Alicious, and like all those kind of conscious groups from there. But it's not to say like it's not like I didn't listen to West Coast. Like I loved MC8, I love DJ Quick.
Well,
like,
sure,
I love all that stuff, but East Coast
Short,
is what,
Ice-T.
yeah. Too Short, Ice-T, like all that type of stuff, man. I was a huge Ghetto Boys fan though. Like I love to this day Scarface, Willie D, rest in peace to Bushwick Bill. Like the whole Rap-A-Lot movement in the early 90s was huge. Like they just had such a vast majority like of artists, man, because they had some that were from the West Coast that were on Rap-A-Lot, which was a Southern label, and so you kind of got this mixed bag of like Seagroom, who was from Oakland, who got killed in 95, 96, and I don't know, man. It was just, it's everywhere. But like now, I mean, it's just really everything, I mean, I mostly listen to the stuff I grew up listening to on a daily basis, which is East Coast. So
I bust everything up, but I figured East Coast just because I came up East Coast and they were first, and it didn't really like the West Coast came later. But I know that you're old school. I just found it interesting. You're from the West Coast, and you had the teams on the East Coast, and I just almost knew that you were going to say that came up on the East Coast rap first and everything else. And, it's pretty wild.
I mean,
pretty cool.
It was Public Enemy, it was Boogie Down Productions, KRS-One, and it was all that. It was Run DMC, it was Houdini, it was Grandmaster Flash. Like that was all the type of things that meant the entire world to me, man. I was probably the only kid ever that was bumping Jimmy Spicer. Like who the fuck is Jimmy Spicer? It's like. Yeah, it's just, it's crazy when you really think about it. But yeah, it is true. It's kind of funny, like, East Coast, everything for a West Coast cat. And, it's funny because, like, I support Vancouver hip-hop like crazy, but most Vancouver hip-hop sounds very, very East Coast, like the Rascals and all that type of stuff, and, like, early Swollen Members and all that type of stuff is very East Coast influence. It doesn't have any of that, like, West Coast gangster wine, or it's totally different, right? But, yeah, pretty interesting.
What about this? I don't know if you're into this stuff at all, but this is very East Coast. Were you into like the, because I was, but were you into like the New York hardcore music, like the New York punk, straight edge hardcore stuff? Because it was very New York. It was all these bands came out at the same time, and it was a scene. And I know you listen to a lot of music like I do.
Oh man,
I don't know into that scene at all, but I'm just. Out of curiosity,
dude,
New York straight hardcore.
Some of the New York hardcore punk music was absolutely phenomenal. That shit still bangs, man. Like it's fucking insane, dude. I have a few albums still, but it's honestly, it's been a while since I've actually really kind of checked it out. What's the band I'm thinking of right now? I'm totally forgetting their name. I'm so stupid. Oh man.
Were they straight edge?
It would have been early 2000s. Okay, I gotta try and.
Oh no, I'm out by that time. Okay, all right.
Maybe it was
early
that time.
2000s shit.
Oh fuck, man.
I'm still fucking late 80s, early 90s. Everything.
No. Yeah, for sure. But I'm trying to think of this one band's name, and I can't fucking think of a man. Oh, dude, my brain is not working right now.
Yeah, I was just curious because it's so funny about the East Coast, but East Coast is where it's at when it comes to entertainment. I've always been, I've always said that. Not because I live here, because I'm not a homer. Believe it, I'm not. I fucking prefer the weather on the West Coast and the people to a certain degree. But
yeah, I mean, maybe that's one thing, because like where I live in BC, I live in central BC, which is the weather is very similar to like a New York type weather, right? Where I go 8 hours south of here, and then it's just California. Like it's just pure 110 degrees all fucking summer, right? Like BC is the most bizarre place in the world because we have like every climate right next to each other. It literally is the only place in the world like that. Like we have a rainforest and we have a desert, and then we get, you go 6 hours here and then you get fucking 4 feet of snow. It's really bizarre.
Right.
It's really, really bizarre. But like I've lived in those climates, though, like down south, and having 110 degree weather for 4 months. Like it never changes. It's so fucking hot. It's just it's this dead desert fucking Vegas, like burn your ass off heat. We're up here.
I'll take it over the cold.
Yeah, when it gets like 90 degrees where I am, it is fucking. It's a weird hot. It's like way different. It's like it almost feels. It's hard to explain. You have to live through it, kind of. But
it's fucking horrible here because of the humidity.
Yeah, and that's what the one thing I don't get up here. We're down in Vancouver. You will right off the water and stuff. You get that humidity and shit, but Up here, it's like really, really dry though too. But then you get into just off Vancouver into the Penticton Kelowna area kind of thing, and it's Vegas. It's just desert.
Right.
110 degree weather. So, and JP hates when weather gets bright. Who the fuck is talking about the fucking weather?
I prefer cold weather, but I hate snow.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
fuck yeah.
I'm not a fucking snow.
Yeah. You had snowed here last week.
I'm just so happy it doesn't
Never
snow
ends.
here like it used to growing up. Like, we don't get those 8 feet to 10 feet of snow every year. In fact, we barely get snow much. It'll snow a couple dumps. It'll stick around the winter, but we get like 2 weeks of cold weather. And I mean, really, you could take your winters off in February if you wanted to, kind of thing. It's not that big of a deal, but,
Sure. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and weather. I guess, you know what, man? I mean, we
Get to the reviews.
might as well get to the reviews. I mean, we're pushing, I think we're about 50, 55 minutes now. That's pretty much what I expected that to go to, so.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is a Patreon show from, I think maybe our last one. At least for, like, if we get a franchise or something in the future.
Right.
But it's the last one we have on the docs here. This was Sam Edwards. This was his pick.
So, actually, speaking of the whole
Nice.
franchise thing on the Patreon, you need to update that, because I think half of them that are listed, we've actually done.
We've done, yeah. Yeah, I will do that. I forgot about that. But actually, somebody had recently messaged us asking us if we would do something. I forget what it was. I'll get back to you on that in a second. I have it in my messages.
Okay. All right. Well, while you ponder what's going on there on your phone, we are going to end the intro here, and we'll be back with you guys in a moment to talk about some Karloff Lugosi films.
Yeah.
All right. Check you guys then.
Nice.
Yo, who this?
Yo, Moodz, it's your boy, the ill-mannered funky child, calling you to remind you that the featured reviews on this episode contain spoilers.
Aw, yeah, man, that's right, brother. Thanks for the heads up, playa. Now go back to being an unproductive asshole.
Fuck you. I tell your listeners to stop being so dumb, silly, sensitive.
Yeah.
And now, our feature presentation.
All right, so getting into the featured reviews here on episode 226 with the homeboy Dave Z and JP, and I'd be the MOOD to the Z. Okay, enough with the rhyming. I'm just joking. But yeah, again, this is a Patreon pick coming from the homeboy Sam Edwards. He has been a very prolific Patreoner over the years. I believe he's picked many, many shows. But he wanted to take it all the way back to the golden age of horror films, specifically the 30s, pretty much. There's one film here from 1940, but we're going to take it back to the Universal years with some Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, like golden age shit right here. First film up from 1934 is The Black Cat. Yes. Quick little synopsis.
So these were all first time watches for me. What
Me too.
about, I assume, Moodz, you watched all 4 of these before?
No, I actually had never seen The Invisible Ray. I've seen The Black Cat many times and The Raven. Black Friday was a first time watch when this box set came out, and I neglected to watch The Invisible Ray until this show.
Okay.
And I don't know why. I just watched the other 3. And I just kind of skipped over The Invincible Ray, and then, yeah, that was the first time watch for me. So, but yeah, no, I've seen The Black Cat many times. So a quick little synopsis on The Black Cat, which says Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat. American honeymooners in Hungary become trapped in a home of a Satan-worshipping priest when the bride is taken there for medical help following a road incident. He's not technically a priest, is he? He's more of a... he's an architect, isn't he? Isn't that actually what his profession is?
Right. But he acts as a priest when everybody's coming in at the end, and he's like the head of the table type thing. He's like the leader of it, right?
I guess that kind of makes sense.
This is the first movie to do this, to use Satanism as a cult? It was
so
never done.
Okay, so I have that in my notes, and I was wondering about that too, because 1934 seemed like a very early period for showcasing, satanic cults and ritual sacrifices in a film. I mean, really, when was that being shown before? And I was definitely wondering that. It's kind of interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So it does make sense. But yeah, no, he's like, I think by trade in the film, they label him as an architect. But yeah, he's definitely a priest of the satanic variety. So, but very, very interesting premise. So I will say, this adaptation isn't really this movie is just basically name only. It's based off of Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Black Cat, name only. The narrative here has nothing to do with Poe's story at all.
There is a black cat.
There's technically two black cats. There's technically two black cats because he kills the first one, then he just randomly picks up another one. Which is totally unexplained in itself, too. It's like the weirdest thing. I always thought that was so funny because when Bela Lugosi kills the cat, it's just like, okay, well, you killed my cat.
He didn't even care.
It's like he doesn't even give a shit. It's like, it's so weird, man. It's just such a strange premise, but
I didn't think he killed him until later. I was like, okay, I thought maybe he just threw, because number one, I couldn't tell what he threw. I rewound it 3 times, and I couldn't tell what those things were. He picked the thing off the table, and he threw it at the cat, and the cat makes a noise. I'm like, well, maybe he didn't kill him, because number one, I don't know what he threw. Number two, the guy didn't react like he killed him. I just thought maybe he threw something at it and he ran away. But apparently he killed him.
That's the thing. That's the thing when you're watching a lot of these Golden Age films. Like they're very short. They're very choppy in editing and stuff, and they leave out a lot of like even reactions or even the end result of deaths and stuff like that. So you have to really kind of pay attention because you can easily miss those things. Right. Yeah. Like I remember I always used to take away from this film the fact that like dude ends up getting skinned and shit, and I'm just like, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it actually,
it's implied, but they don't show it, right? It's like, fuck, dude, like they talk about this in 1934, and I'm like, that is actually really crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was one of the last pre-code films. So this was before like the basically the ratings board came in,
right?
Which I believe started in 1935 or ish. But yeah, so you could kind of do whatever you wanted. I mean, I'm sure there was still like people weren't willing to do like so much stuff just because like the war back then. I mean, you're not going to show like a bunch of nudity and stuff back then, but you could still like have like insinuated skinned alive stuff, which is pretty crazy. Honestly, it's actually quite disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not graphic. Yeah, actually, the whole nudity thing, I know I looked into this one time, and I think, like, nudity wasn't really being shown in, like, these type of films until, I think, the late 50s, I think, is when it first made its appearance or something like that. So, like, you think, for this type of stuff, like, that seems pretty early for implying skinning and satanic stuff. I just think this movie is kind of ahead of its time. And it's interesting for Universal to do something like this with these characters. Like I just think it's a really interesting script.
Yeah.
Like it's just so crazy because they're like, there was nothing like this. This must have really kind of blown people's socks off. Like we got a satanic cult. We've got murdering of animals, which actually in Invisible Ray, there's a dog gets killed in that movie too. So it's kind of funny. But there's just so many elements in this movie that are quite shocking for even when you watch it to from today's standards and stuff like that. This is the type of movie that would be very interesting. You take this exact narrative and you remake it in today's world. Like you could do a lot with it, man. It could be very sadistic, very gory. Like there's a lot of potential here to have like a film that would be like, holy shit, man, that's pretty crazy. To me, it wouldn't really have the same effect though, because like you can't. Like when you like, there's something about Karloff and Lugosi on screen that's so fucking powerful. It doesn't even matter how bad the narrative is or what's going on. They're so effective in their roles all the time that you buy into these characters. It's so crazy too with these 4 films when you break it down. Like they play doctors in like every movie. One of them is a doctor in every film. It's so weird.
It was the era of the mad scientist and shit too. You had a lot of doctors and scientists and shit.
Yeah.
This was actually the first of 8 films that these two starred in together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that they were in all those films together. That's crazy.
There's a couple of movies I haven't actually seen. I've seen, I think, 5 of the 8 movies that they've done together, and a couple of them I don't even know what they are. I'm not even sure if they're even horror films, to be honest, but yeah.
Well, this works the best in that respect because they are really opposing each other straight up for the entire movie. I mean, they even go as far as to have the chess match during the thing, and the whole movie itself is a chess match between these two.
Honestly, like, their careers were kind of a chess match too.
Right.
Like they had sort of a friendly rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have said that they had like disdain for each other, but it's
been disproved. It's kind of been
disproved.
Yeah.
But like a lot of people still like go like, you know, subconsciously they didn't really care for each other, but it's like you know what I mean? But there's actually a nice special feature on all 4 of these films that goes through. It's like a 4-part history of Karloff and Lugosi together, and it sort of talks about like how Karloff really became pretty successful in his career, and Lugosi's career kind of plummeted a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then also it's funny. It's so funny to listen back to like hear them talk about stuff. Like I think it was when The Raven was being produced. Like Karloff was getting all these letters like how could you want to scare people, like that is sickening and stuff like that. And like, you know,
right.
just these crazy people who are like didn't understand like the idea of a horror film. This was the highest grossing film for Universal at the box office this year too.
Yeah.
So it like obviously there was an interest in horror, but like there was still a lot of crazy people out there who like just thought it was like evil and didn't want anything to do with it, and like would actively go out to shame these actors who were in these films.
Yeah, and the
thing about horror movies here, this is what I'm noticing as I'm watching these movies, and I've made my rounds with the Universal classics. Not a lot. I'm not going to sit here and profess to say I've seen a lot, but I have seen my share of the early ones of all of them, the major monsters, and Bride, and a couple of the sequels and stuff. So I've seen them. They haven't been my cup of tea, but I've tried to, stretch out more. But I noticed this about these movies. These movies are made the exact same way as other movies are made in the time period, where the dialogue is good, the acting is good, the way it's shot is good. There's no difference between a horror movie and a drama except the narrative. Where in the future, it's complete. Like horror movies now compared to other movies are different. You know, different decades, it's even more radically different. But here in the 30s, I don't see people. I don't understand the complaint of people because they're well-made movies with good actors.
It's not like the era where in the 80s where horror was considered low budget and like crap. Like these were still like decently produced.
Yeah, these were
A-list
like, films.
Budgets.
These were A-list films. I mean, Boris Karloff and Lugosi were considered, the biggest stars of the time and stuff, and they were making these movies like they were. Horror didn't have that stigma as being like a lesser class type genre film. It wasn't even really. It was just a horror film.
Also, this was in a time period where studios contracted actors to only do films for them for like 8 pictures or something, you know what I mean? So this was during that period where these two were contracted by Universal to do a certain amount of films for Universal, which is, I guess, the classic Hollywood era, right? Like where you had these, where they would make stars out of people, you know what I mean? It was much bigger, like the studio made a star. Much bigger deal back then, where like now it's like acting anything, interesting time period that I've always fascinated with and honestly enjoying learning more about.
Right. Yeah. Well, this era is really interesting and important to film in general because Boris Karloff is one of the major players in creating the union for actors and stuff, right? Because it was it was a very big thing because Boris realized that the actors were being abused and they were working too much for less pay, blah blah blah, and so he went out on a stance and and kind of helped create that whole union for the actors and stuff, because he just everything wanted to be fair and stuff. But he was taking a big chance in his career, because if it hadn't worked out, he would have never worked again, kind of thing, right? But fortunately for him, it worked out. And, he doesn't get a lot of credit for it. In some documentaries, people will talk about Karloff's, input in creating that whole thing, and how he risked his entire career to make sure other people weren't suffering. And, I wish you'd get a little bit more credit for that, because, Karloff was really about the people. Like, people kind of saw him as this monster, because that's what people knew him as. They knew him literally as the monster. Like, he played in these horror films and stuff, and it was hard for people to separate, the real person from the villains that he played on screen. But he was really about the people, and he was a very genuine person, and really helped change Hollywood for the better. Because if it had never been changed, I mean, there was so many people that were just being stomped on, and that he just couldn't handle that shit. So, but big on him, man. Like, he didn't have to do that. He could have never had a career. He could have been blackballed right there, and he kind of was a little bit. It did it changed his career, but he still had a career after that, right? It's not like he fucking got blackballed to the point where, he never did anything again. But it was.
Who would you say you like more out of the two?
I'm a huge Karloff fan. I think his presence is just undeniable. The thing is with Lugosi is that he didn't quite have the range that Karloff did a little bit, and he got miscast a lot in movies too. In actual, we'll get to one where he totally gets miscast in. And there's a story behind that too, to why he's in that role. I also
prefer Karloff. I think Karloff has more range, like you said, and also just like I feel like Lugosi's accent kind of holds him back a little bit too. Like, not like just in terms of range, like the type of character you want to see him play, but like Karloff, like there's something about him when you watch him, and Lugosi has it too, but I just think Karloff has it more, where you watch him and you could just see like the passion in it, you know what I mean? Just the raw talent, like just a natural talent.
Right.
And I prefer Karloff.
And he was like a total perfectionist too, man. Like, I've heard stories about Karloff on sets where people start kind of ad-libbing and just kind of doing their own dialogues and shit, and he'd be like, bro, no, we're doing this by the script.
He said bro.
Yeah, he was probably most definitely saying bro, and in his accent with his lisp, because Boris Karloff had quite a lisp, right? But like he would get really frustrated with other actors when they started kind of doing their own thing for the dialogue. Like, no, got to do it this way. It's like hilarious, man. But
Dave,
no.
you prefer Karloff too?
Well, here's the thing. I agree with you guys about Karloff and his range and everything. And, if I had to choose, it would be Karloff. But I have to throw a little something extra out there. I don't think that anything Karloff did is as good or iconic as Lugosi's Dracula.
Really?
I actually disagree
you
with
watch
that.
Dracula. Well, if you watch Dracula 31, if Lugosi isn't Dracula in that movie, it's not half the movie. His performance, the way he delivers the lines, his look and everything is just so iconic that to this day, people speak like that's Dracula. It's more of a impactful thing. I think Karloff is better. I agree with you guys. I am agreeing with Karloff. I'm picking him between the two, but I don't think Karloff has that one singular performance that is iconic as Lugosi and Dracula.
It's interesting because it may be that, but I think in terms of like longevity when it comes to Lugosi's Dracula versus Karloff's Frankenstein, I cannot ever look at a Frankenstein character. It doesn't matter if you're watching Karloff in Frankenstein 31, or if you're watching fucking Mary Shelley's Frankenstein 94, if you're watching some shitty fucking Jess Franco Frankenstein movie or whatever, I cannot help but see Karloff's face in every single Frankenstein, where when I'm watching Dracula movies, the face changes so drastically because it literally doesn't have that makeup and stuff. Like the Frankenstein look is just so classic, so iconic with Karloff's face. And I don't know, man. I just like, okay, so this might be a hot take. Well, it's not really a hot take because I'm not saying he's better. He's just more I like him better. But Christopher Lee is my favorite Dracula. I love the Hammer Dracula films. I'm a big fan. I just rewatched all 7 of them, or was there 8 of them again, and I love Chris Lee as Dracula. Like, he's just undeniably fucking terrorizing. His eyes just like terrorize me when I watch those movies.
He's great, man.
The original Dracula, it's great, but if I had to pick and choose Universal versus Hammer, Lugosi versus Lee, I'm going with Lee every single time. It's just my personal taste.
I get that, but Lee had so many more at bats too. I mean, if you just saw one movie, let's just say they just made the first Dracula movie, you know what I mean? And there was no other sequels. And I've heard many people say, and I think he's great. I haven't seen them all, but I purposely went out and bought every fucking Blu-ray of the Dracula Hammer that he's in, and he plays Dracula. Mm-hmm. So I am a fan of it too. Yeah. And I will agree also, the look of Frankenstein, Karloff, is fucking also iconic. Mm-hmm. The look, the bolts in the neck, the big forehead, the fucking everything, brilliant. I was just thinking more of the, the classic speaking. He has so much. You
even see like words. Cartoons where they I am Dracula, I want to suck your blood. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That came from him,
Yeah, but that's also, but you also get an audio there. You get a dialogue with Dracula versus Frankenstein. So if I'm just looking pure look, when I look at any Frankenstein, all I see is Karloff. So it's hard to compare, because you're right though, because when you hear Dracula, I want to suck your blood, that's totally, that's Bela Lugosi's take on Dracula, and that became iconic to the point where everybody imitates Lugosi. But it doesn't matter how you look at it through the almost 100 years of Frankenstein, the look of Frankenstein, it always looks like Karloff, man. It really does.
I think at the end of the day, they're both fucking pretty awesome.
Yeah. I've always really liked Karloff.
I agree with you guys.
Karloff actually changes his look in movies too. Like, it's kind of funny, like how he has a very distinctive look, but if you look in certain movies, like even in Invisible Ray, like he's got that, even the hair just changes his look drastically in the movie. Like, it's fucking crazy, man.
And Lugosi always had his hair slicked back, looking like half Dracula. You know what I mean?
It's like he was Dracula in every movie, but he wasn't wearing the fucking cape.
Right? And he was just talking a little quicker, because he talks so slow in Dracula.
Yeah, right.
But that's what I like about it. That's the delivery of the lines it's iconic, because he does so much with so little dialogue. Of course, Christopher Lee does too. He has such. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue. I'm not telling you guys things you don't know. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue in all those Dracula movies, and he makes the most of that too, with the looks and his screen presence.
Well, so, I mean, in the first Dracula film, he doesn't even talk. I don't think.
Not much.
And that's the thing though too, because he always they wanted to give him more dialogue in certain films. He's like, well, this is stupid. And he's like, Dracula doesn't. He's more of a presence. He doesn't need dialogue to fucking make an impression or get the point across, kind of thing. And I mean, some of the movies, they got a little bit obviously they was writing a lot more dialogue in the late 60s, early 70s ones and stuff. But I don't know, there's something about Chris Lee though, man, because he's really tall and he's got that perfect face for it and beady eyes, and I don't know, I think Hammer did a good job with creating the longevity of the Lee Dracula character. But you're right though, he did play it a lot more. There was a lot more opportunity. There's a lot more idea. There's a wider spectrum to the Lee Dracula than there is Lugosi.
He could hone his craft, and he's also looking at Lugosi, maybe not for inspiration, but for comparison. When Lugosi did it, he had no one to draw any comparisons from. They just making this movie in the 30s. Here, go on the screen and say it like this. Oh,
it was the the adaptation of the book kind of thing. And here I'm going to put my spin on it and stuff. But when it comes down to it though too, I think the other thing, I know Christopher Lee from so many other movies too. He's a good actor. He's really good at what he does in general. He has done so many crazy roles. I mean, if you look at here's a polar opposite comparison, but you take a look at Dracula versus the Fu Manchu movies. That's fucking Chris Lee in the Fu Man. He plays an Asian. You would never see that today, because by today's standards it's completely racist. But he plays a fucking Asian dude. It's so polar opposite of what he's doing. But he done great. I mean, that was the time when they always used to have white people playing Asians. It always happened in those fucking movies. But I'm just saying his range and the way he could really kind of transform and stuff was quite compelling, actually. Lee's a good actor.
Really and he's so great as a heel in that role that he, even in major franchises, even in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, he plays characters that are like big bads that are kind of like Dracula in a way. Like the way he talks, he's always so classy with his delivery stuff. And even those guys had to have been thinking about Dracula when they cast him in those movies, saying, yeah, he can deliver, he's got that booming voice, and let's put him as one of our big bads in our fucking franchise. And he nailed it, in my opinion, in those ones too. Mm-hmm. But that's Chris Lee.
You know what is a really interesting thing about the Black Cat that I noticed, and I was like, instantly went to, I don't know if they have it in the trivia, I'm not sure if it's written in there, I might have looked it up somewhere else, but I'm like watching the movie, with an eye for reviewing the film. And I'm like, man, the fucking music, because generally a lot of these early 30 movies, right up until about the early 40s, the score would usually only play during the credits and the out credits, right? Opening credits and the end credits. And you'd have like music and stuff like that. But in this movie, they play the music and it changes throughout the whole film. There's a score through the whole movie, which was rare by 1934. To have that score playing, it's quite prevalent in this. Like the music changes a lot. There's scenes where it's just like really overpowering and stuff. And I was like, and I noticed it, and I was like, wow. And I kind of did a quick little check on that. They're like, yeah, this is like one of the first movies where it was actually ever used through like the whole thing. And I was like, fuck, crazy. I totally got that. So I thought that was kind of a unique thing. That's wild. Yeah, it is kind of a unique thing.
I think the story to this one is that like it's such a short movie. It's only 70 minutes. But the story is actually kind of deep. Like you have this,
like 65
this history
minutes.
Between the two. Is it?
Yeah.
65 minutes. And you know what? You're right, JP. The narrative here is so much deeper than a 65-minute film, considering there's a whole history between these two characters. They don't just end up at this place by chance. I mean, in a sense, a little bit due to circumstances. But the point is there's a history with them in the war and also World War I, and also with Karloff stealing Lugosi's wife. And there's just all this like...
And Lugosi having a daughter.
Right.
Which he doesn't even really know is... Okay, I got a question about this. What is your guys' take on this? Because I'm watching this movie thinking to myself going, man, dude, like, what is she like? I don't understand the time frame here, because they do state in the film that the daughter died... I mean, the mother died when the daughter was really young. Well, the daughter even says herself, she was really, really young, right? So this is 15 years after the war ended. He married the wife of Lugosi, married her, and then she died 2 years later. So we're talking 13 years after she passed away. The daughter's super young, but in this narrative, Karloff is married to the daughter. If she was even 3 or 4 years old, that would only make her 16, 17 years old.
And it's at the most. Think about that.
Yeah. No matter how you look at it, she is still underage. Like, she could be 15. Like, she was so young, she barely remembered her mom. And I'm like, bro, that means she was under 4. You have to put it in that perspective. She's 16 at tops here in the narrative.
It's fucked up.
Right?
Right.
And he's married to her. And we don't know for how long, because it has been 13 years since the wife passed away. So he would have been married for...
And he raised her.
Right.
He pulled a Woody Allen.
It's so weird, right? I'm thinking of this going, this is a little bit...
he hadn't seen the wife in 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that he would have had to have the wife pregnant so that she would at least be 18.
So
no, he hadn't.
I think they said she's 20.
No, he hadn't seen the wife in 15 years since the war ended.
No, he spent 15 years in a prison camp.
Right.
But he hadn't seen the wife in 18 years.
Oh, so... Oh, did they say...
The 15 years was how much he spent in a prison.
Right, but I thought that he had seen her... I thought they even specifically said they hadn't seen her 15 years since the war, because he'd been in that camp for that 15 years. So I just assumed that he had seen her right when he went into the camp after 15 years. So he hadn't seen her for...
He was in the war for a little bit, then he ended up in the prison camp.
Right.
So it was
he hadn't seen his wife for a couple years before he went into the camp. into the prison camp.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant. See, when you said they could remake this now, I'm thinking there's no way they would do it because you got to cast that aside. Her exact age. Think about it. Look at it this way. What if I got with my wife, right, and she had a fucking 3-year-old, right, and I was with her for 15 years, and then I had to raise her as my stepdaughter, and then my wife dies, and I marry my fucking stepdaughter who I've raised since she was 3.
So now she's 18.
It happens.
It's sickening.
It's fucking weird. It doesn't matter how old. Like, you're right. The age is irrelevant. The point is that he married his stepdaughter, who's still relatively young, no matter how you look at it. Right.
It's creepy.
I just thought it was a weird narrative.
If it was an older woman and she was 20 when he met her, and maybe 15 years later or something happened, and there was a romantic thing I could look the other way to a degree on that, but to raise a toddler and then for 15 years or 18 years and then marry her, that's fucking that guy's fucked up. Right. That's all I was thinking watching the movie. I'm like, wait a minute here.
That's why he's the villain.
It is weird, man. Oh, and that's something I got to say about Karloff, man. His character, the way he looks with that fucking hair and just the way he dresses and shit, he looks evil. He's like Dr. Evilstein in this movie, man. It's like, he just looks the part, like, hardcore, man. Like that fucking Satan-worshipping priest architect. Yeah. Like, he just got it. The whole look is fantastic in this film, man.
He looks super creepy when he's tied up to the thing and he's about to get skinned.
I love the way he just stares. Like, in the beginning of the film when, like, Lugosi's talking to him and he's just kind of like, Karloff is just staring at him.
Right.
And you're waiting for that answer, and his look is just so perfect. You're just like, oh my God, he's so damn evil. He does such a good job portraying this character, man. It's great stuff. But
yeah, and then the whole cult thing is really cool too. It's just, I think the story is like way deeper than and like more fleshed out than I expected for a film in 1934.
Right, it is, man. There's a lot more going on that isn't really fully fleshed out because it can't be. We get bits and pieces of it. Like the fact that like Lugosi is there at the house and doesn't know his daughter is there is crazy too. Like there's a lot of stuff you could really expand upon, and the backstory is really interesting with the war and how he betrayed the people, and then they ended up getting like 10,000 soldiers fucking killed and shit like that. And he was just he was evil from that point because obviously it couldn't really be a take on Hitler, even though Hitler wasn't like a household name in 1934, but I mean he was still part of the other war and shit like that. But it's kind of like that type of evil shit, right? No regard for life,
right?
And but it's an interesting story because it has nothing to do with Poe's Black Cat. I love that about it. It's like, but I love Poe's Black Cat.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Like they talked in the beginning after the cat was killed. They talked about evil transferring something. Like, so I thought this movie was going to go somewhere in that respect where there was evil in the cat and there was evil here. And I thought it was going to become this supernatural tale of some other things. And they completely dropped. It never went anywhere with the black cat gimmick. It was just weird.
All it is Lugosi is terrified of cats. He kills the cat. Next thing, Karloff is seen carrying a second cat, which we have no idea why he has a second black cat. But then that's the cool scene because we get to see him walk around the basement with all his dead women bodies down there.
Oh
and
yeah,
shit like that.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah,
so he's carrying the cat,
the glass coffins.
Yeah, and like I gotta say, man, like for 1934, man, just seeing these and like the bodies are creepy too because the hair is actually standing vertically.
Yeah, it's fucking weird.
Weird looking, man. It's floating and it's so unique. But that's kind of like the end of the black cat. Like we get to see, I think the black cat, he appears one more time, but he's not really a driving force in the narrative whatsoever. But that is the main focus of that scene. Not the main focus, but when Karloff is carrying the cat. So
I love how in like these old Universal films, like there's always like some button or sliver that fucking explodes the house.
Right.
That happens so often in these old movies.
Yeah.
This is the
He's an architect. If anybody, he should have one.
So my question is, why would you have a lever in your basement that you could just easily pull down that's going to ignite the dynamite that's going to blow your shit up? So like you're anticipating.
It's like in all these movies, like all the Universal
as the
monster
evil
movies.
doctor, as the evil person who's got the satanic cult downstairs and shit. Like you're anticipating that shit's going to go south one day and you might have to blow your shit up.
I guess.
Right?
I mean, get
really
rid of the
thinking
evidence,
ahead.
right? You got to get rid of the evidence.
Right, I guess so. Yeah.
It's a quick sacrifice. If you guys want to sacrifice you and your whole cult to Satan, you can do it real quick as opposed to slow death. Fucking just blow each other up.
You know, I just gotta say though, man, this movie for 1934 has so many unique things. Like we've touched on, like, you know, it's got the killing of the cat, which we don't get to see on there. You know, there's some pretty drastic violence in this movie when, you know, he goes and he kills the daughter, you know, in a rage. We don't get to see that, but he kills the fucking daughter, which is technically his wife.
Yeah.
He kills the wife. You know, we get shit blown up. There's satanic cults. There's a whole idea that, you know, he basically murdered like 10,000 people. Like, there's so many things in this narrative that are like crazy for this time. Like, there's a lot of death and destruction, a lot of evil, and the whole fact of the satanic, what do they call it? It's the day of, he needs to sacrifice on, what's the actual name of the,
I don't know. I remember the rights of Lucifer.
Yeah, but it's done on a certain day, and like they get kind of specific about that and stuff like that. And yeah, there's a lot of crazy. That's why I've always loved this movie, because it's fascinating to me that there's so many dark themes in this narrative that would have been cool.
The Dark of the Moon.
Dark of the Moon. That's what it's called.
Yeah, right.
So you have to sacrifice during that part of that certain time in Dark of the Moon, which is actually. Dark. I don't know. I don't think that's supposed to be Friday. No, it's Black Friday stuff. But anyways, but there's just a lot of darkness to the movie that I always loved about this film. I thought it was way ahead of its time. I thought it was really great. It's acted well. I do think there's a very, very missed moment in this movie, though. I think there's a really cool scene where Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi sit down to play chess. Literally play chess for a couple lives, for the couple's lives. And of course, it's just so against the grain. But like, Bela Lugosi loses the chess game, right? You think that he would actually end up winning this, but he doesn't. But I think that whole scene could have been so much better if you had this amazing sequence of back and forth dialogue between the two about life and death, and just like you could have really extended that scene to the point where it could have got really, really in depth, and like you could have built so much tension. But it never really goes into that depth, and you're just. Like as a film lover, I'm just like, man, this is the point where it's kind of setting it up, you know?
Yeah,
like this great dialogue. I think it's kind of a missed point. You know what I mean?
30s and 40s films, looking back, like I feel like a lot of them, if not all of them, have sections of missed opportunity.
Right.
Like I always feel that way. Even hell, I watched 30 Universal monster films like one year, and I always felt like there was room for more shit, or like different scenes, or like I would think about how it could have been better. It's just, I think the time period, a lot of these films were super damn short too, you know?
But like when you have a sit down, when you have a villain versus hero face to face, literally playing chess for people's lives, like you would think even in those days, like, shit, man, this is a great opportunity. Let's have some great dialogue. Let's kind of extend this shit. Like it was like a perfect moment. And like, it doesn't always happen when you watch movies, but that was a great moment between two iconic characters. Could you imagine if that scene was 10 to 12 minutes of back and forth crazy dialogue that just like builds tension to the point of like, holy fuck, like, you know, we're playing with these and we don't really, you know, because I don't know, in this one you kind of
Nobody would know what they were talking about except the two of them. They'd be making these little subtle jabs at each other that and no one else in the room would even know what they were talking about but the two of them. They'd be fucking brilliant, man. Yes.
Yeah, dude, I always thought that scene could have been just incredibly iconic too, man. Yeah. I mean, we got two amazing actors like literally face to face playing chess with lives. Like that's a cool scenario. Really, really cool stuff. So
totally.
Yeah.
Wow. That's I never thought of that, but yeah, that would have definitely added to it. Shit. How about the guy's name? How about fucking Lugosi's name in the movie? Fucking Vertigast. You know what other movie that's featured in, right? I knew it right away because it's one of my favorite movies and I've seen it so many times. But I was like, holy shit, that's why they named him that. And it's German. And it took place in Germany. So that's a big hint there. But
yeah, what is it? I'm totally blanking.
I'll give you a hint. Oh no, Vertigast, they said. You have to. I know you know. You're going to kick yourself when you don't know the answer. You saw him? That's what the one girl says to the other. What did he do? I'll just tell you. Suspiria.
Oh, fuck. Totally.
The fucking guy. The doctor.
Right. Oh, my God.
Some shit?
I was totally thinking in a different direction there, and I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, I think it was like Pentagrass or whatever, or not Pentagrass, but the guy's name from Child's Play 3. I'm like, is it that name? I'm like, no, because they're kind of playing more in that, but I'm like, no, it's nothing to do with Germans. But yeah, you're right.
And he was a doctor Verdergast.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Same shit, dumping the fucking water down her throat and shit in bed.
Oh shit,
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's so crazy.
So that's a nice nod. It's a nice nod by Argento to fucking some old school shit like this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
very
it's
cool.
it's funny too, because in the trivia they actually say that the director Edgar G. Ulmer admitted to in an interview that the Post story was just credited to draw public attention. It like had nothing to do with the narrative at all. Because it always confused me. I was like,
you think back, right? Like you wonder if people at that era were like big Edgar Allan Poe fans and went to see this movie and was like disappointed, you know, like how we do now if an adaptation isn't done right.
Right.
Right. I bet. I mean, it got asses in the seats, and they probably were like, well. But the movie was probably good, so they didn't care. But still, I'm sure it crossed somebody's mind. Did you see what happened with the director? He got blackballed.
From this movie?
After this movie, because he stole the girl. I don't know if it was the daughter or the mother. Actually, he hit on both of them. One of them got mad at him, and he had to fucking stop his advances. The other one, he married. But she was married to a producer of Universal. Like a fucking big wig at Universal, and he ended up stealing her away from him and marrying her, and then he got fucking blackballed.
Oh,
really? I did not know that.
Yeah, dude.
Crazy.
He fought with his dick way too much, and it fucked up his career.
Right.
Yep. Imagine that, though. Stealing a fucking high executive of the movie company's wife off the fucking set and having her, taking her from him.
I mean,
the balls on him.
It's kind of funny how that like real life kind of imitated the art a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
because fucking Karloff stole the fucking wife.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yep. Even back then, guys were doing fucked up shit like that, fucking behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. Yeah. Do you guys have anything else on the Black Cat?
I think I'm good on the Black Cat.
Yeah, I think I'm good on that one too. Okay. Dave, you want to start us off here? Some ratings?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's like you guys said, even in that short time, like an hour and 5 minutes, so much happened. I wasn't bored, and it never felt like it was like they were trying to fit too much shit in that hour. It just seemed like it was paced just enough, and all the dark themes and just the whole idea of I'm going to tear the skin from your body slowly, bit, and all that shit. That's badass, Mm-hmm. And it was a good story. It kept you engaged. You felt for the character, what's going on with his ex and his daughter, and the bad guy was bad, and it was pretty good. For me, it's 7.5.
JP.
I really enjoyed this one. These are like perfect movies for like early October where you're just getting right into the season.
Mm-hmm.
And you start with the older stuff, man. I'll definitely, now that I have this box set, I'll definitely throw these on, at least a couple of them, maybe not all four. Every Halloween, every other Halloween we're there. But yeah, I give it an 8. I think it's very solid for the time period. Even for today, it's solid. Very good movie. I was actually surprised. I didn't think it would be as good as it ended up being. Like, I didn't think it would cross like 7.5, 8 territory, but it did.
Yeah, I think this movie is like incredibly ahead of its time, man. I still think that, it's kind of cliche to say, but like sometimes when you don't show shit, like less is more. And every time I watch this movie, when like Karloff fucking freaks out and then basically kills his wife, the daughter, it always like affects me. I'm like, bro, he just like went in there and just like fucking did her up, just touched her right up. You don't get to see it. I'm just like, I don't know. There's something about that scene that just totally, it's just very effective to me. I think it's a very, very dark film. There's a lot of themes that just, kind of keep you interested. For a 65-minute film, I mean, name another movie with this much in-depth, like potential narrative, for like 65 minutes. Like, how many other films are like that? None.
This is it. No, this is
It's
it.
crazy. Like, there's just so much going on. It's mind blowing. But I just think it works for what it is, and the whole skinning thing at the end is nuts to me. It's absolutely nuts that is actually in the movie for 1934. It's fucking crazy. Again, you don't get to see this shit, but it doesn't matter because you know what's happening, like the beating of a wife to death, and it's fucking crazy to me, man. I think I would have loved to have seen the cat get nailed with whatever he threw. I always thought he threw like a butt end of a knife or something like that.
I don't know what it was.
I don't know what it was, but you just kind of hear this, it's fucking over. But it's like it kind of loses all its effectiveness because the next scene, Karloff is like carrying another cat. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, when did you bring that shit back? Like, I don't know. But I'm coming in at 8.5 out of 10. I'm a big fan of this. I've stressed this in the past how much I like this movie. I've recommended this to people over the years, and I'm like, if you want to start with like, a Karloff Lugosi film, start with this one. This is the first one they did together.
Yeah.
And it's, it's probably one of the more effective ones that they did too. But I think it's a good one. It's short. If you're not into like long movies, it's a good short watch, and it's definitely got rewatchability to it. And so 8.5 out of 10 on that one.
Nice.
Yeah. Shit.
All right, so that is going to do it for the first film in the Universal box set from 1934, The Black Cat.
Dr. Volin. Can we get Dr. Volin? You're the one chance she's got.
All right, so moving along into the second film on tonight's episode, and it is one from 1935. Also starring Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and it is called The Raven, which is also in the realm of Edgar Allan Poe, once again.
Yeah, this one has more Poe in it.
True.
It definitely has more Poe to it. I wouldn't say
But it's
like
not The Raven.
It's not it's not an adaptation of the story. It uses the title. It uses Edgar Allan Poe as kind of a back part of the narrative too. It's kind of interesting how they incorporate that. But all right, so quick little synopsis. Dr. Volin is a brilliant but unstable surgeon with a morbid obsession for instruments of torture. He saves the life of Jean Thatcher, a beautiful young associate injured in an automobile accident, and becomes increasingly attracted to her. So, yeah, this is definitely a prevalent theme in these movies where either Karloff or Lugosi plays a doctor. So Lugosi plays a doctor in The Black Cat. He also plays a doctor in this movie, but he's also the polar opposite of the Black Cat doctor, where he is the hero, and in this one he is the villain.
Right.
So they
There's
definitely
a role reversal on this one.
Yeah, total role reversal in this film. Like hardcore, man. And it's kind of funny how they create the Karloff character. They kind of created Frankenstein out of him.
Right. I was going to say that it's definitely reminiscent of Frankenstein.
Right. Yeah, it's the sympathetic monster character. Yeah. So the cool thing about this movie is that again, it's not a straight up adaptation of Poe's The Raven story. They use it as like a narrative kind of structure. To Dr. Volin, played by Bela Lugosi, is he's obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe. He's definitely a crazy doctor. He's infatuated with pain and death and things like that, and he loves Edgar Allan Poe stories and essentially wants to kind of become what Poe's stories were, right? It's like life imitating art. This is kind of ahead of its time in itself, right? Like, do people do crazy shit because they see it in movies, or do they do crazy shit because they read it in stories and novels? Well, in this case, yeah, he was very, very influenced by Edgar Allan Poe's morbid obsession with death and instruments of death, like torture stuff, like, especially The Pit and the Pendulum.
The Pit and the Pendulum's the one, yeah.
So
that's the bbig one.
So the story is in this film is Bela Lugosi is basically kind of a retired doctor, and he doesn't want to. He's done with the whole surgery. He's done with being a doctor and stuff like that. Anyways, somebody contacts him one day. His wife has been in an accident, and he pleads with him. He's like, "You're the only doctor that can save her, and you need to come and do this." And he's like, "Nah." He's like, "Bro, no, not happening. And like he's just like this evil fucking asshole. He doesn't give a shit about life and death. And they even question too, like, man, she's gonna die. Like you're the only person that can save her. And he's like, nah, it's okay, man, whatever. Not like that. But like he's basically saying, fuck you, I'm not gonna do this. He actually gives in to it. He saves her life and then becomes essentially infatuated with her. The problem is with her that she's engaged. She's engaged and she's already got a relationship going and stuff. And then her overpowering father's involved and stuff too. So he devises this plan where he wants to basically, in a sense, almost kidnap them. He holds this dinner party and he's got other plans. He's got ulterior motives for the people at this dinner party kind of thing. The cool thing about the narrative is like, so we have Boris Karloff's character who is actually a criminal who contacts Bela Lugosi's character, and he wants the facial change because he's running from the law, and he's already ugly and stuff, and he's already been suffering his whole life. People used to call him ugly, and he's just been tortured his entire life by his looks and stuff. So Lugosi, as evil as he is, and I love this narrative, man. He uses what Lugosi,
that's cool.
He uses what Karloff comes to him for, and basically ends up blackmailing him. He's like, yeah, he's like, yeah, I'll change your face. So what he does, he makes them even fucking uglier.
Fucking worse, dude. But that's not evil as shit, right?
Right? He makes him so ugly and forces him to do his bidding, do his dirty work. And then he says to him, he's like, well, if you kill these people or do whatever I ask you to do, I'll change you into a beautiful person.
Right.
Fucking evil,
Could you
man.
imagine like having like a big mole on the side of your face or something? You want to go get it removed. You go to the doctor and you come out and it's like twice the size. You're like, fuck, that's like the most evil shit ever.
I love it because
I hated this enough to get it removed and then you make it worse.
I love the fact that like when he wakes up, his eye is like drooping down here. He fucked up his face, man. It's so evil. Ridiculous. It is so evil. And you know what I love about this, man, watching these movies in sequence, because Karloff in the first film is so fucking evil. And Lugosi in this movie is so fucking evil. Like, they really
I think
portray...
in this one, Lugosi actually outshines Karloff.
Oh,
this one. Lugosi kills this one.
Yeah, dude. Lugosi's excellent in this film, man, because he's just like... He's so dead set on just performing, like... this ritual fucking Edgar Allan Poe torture shit. It's amazing. But it like the whole narrative is again quite sadistic for 1935. Like people watching this shit must have been like, bro, like what the fuck, man? I don't know. I think this movie is fantastic. It's evil genius, and it's
so fast.
It's so
it just
diabolic.
Fucking flies, dude.
This
movie flies. I mean, I remember. You ever like time check? You know what I mean? I remember time checking. There was like 10 minutes left, and I was like, "Fuck."
Yeah, man. I know these ones go by so quick, dude. I really, I could never figure out which movie I liked better, if it was The Black Cat or The Raven. But after rewatching this one yesterday, I was like, "Fuck, man, this movie is just beyond diabolic to me." It's like actually comically, hilariously diabolic. Like, could you imagine someone doing this in real life to somebody? It's insane. It's not like he had something on him. He changed his fucking face and made him do some shit.
And I gotta say, I actually really like the pendulum's pretty cool, but the shrinking room is actually pretty cool too. Right. It's like, oh, that's neat. Yeah. You know what I mean? Little special effects in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm with you. I really like this film too. I put it right on par with The Black Cat. Actually, it's maybe narrative wise, it's not as deep.
No.
It's really just about a guy who starts liking a girl and wants to kill off the people that are in his way.
Well, it's about his obsession with it's really about his obsession with death and torture, though. He's like a doctor. He's like Dr. Death. He's like Dr. Death. But I love it. I don't know if it was ever implied. I don't know if it was ever implied that they were trying to do like the whole, life imitating art type thing, because he clearly is doing what he's doing because of Poe. Like, without the Poe material, he wouldn't have been doing what he was doing, because it was all based on that. It was all based on the torture shit, right? So it's kind of interesting. Like, I don't know if they were intending to have this commentary in there, but when you watch it like 100 years fucking later, And everything nowadays has commentary, and we're kind of like designed and forced to look into shit and read between the lines on things, because that's just the way horror movies are made now. And they've been made like this for a long time. I'm not sure about the early golden age of Universal films, that they were meant to have commentary in there. But when I look at a film like this, all I see is going, could you imagine if that came out in reality today, that someone built a fucking torture chamber in their house based off of fucking Poe books? Like, it would just be huge news. Like, this dude was like totally influenced by the literature, and that's not good. And then it would be a big thing. Are people really influenced? Are they doing this shit because they're reading? Oh, we got to get these Poe books off the shelves now because we got to cancel Poe because he's influencing people to fucking torture and kill people. Where it wasn't a thing back then, but now when you look at it, it's literally correlating to Poe's torture device. Like, I'm just like, holy shit, dude! Like, this is it's so extreme. But it wasn't then. It was just kind of using it as a narrative tool, Poe, because he was ahead of his time. He was ahead of its time, and this movie, I guess, uses that structure, and to me, it's ahead of its time also. So it's fucking evil, man. It's really, really evil, and I can't believe that movies like this aren't being canceled.
Give it time. They'll get it.
Right? Now that we reviewed it, people are gonna be like, "Oh fuck, they're right. We got to do something about this."
It's coming.
But yeah, it's kind of a scary thought though, man, when people do shit like that. But I love this movie, man. It's really good. It's really, really good. I
agree.
Like, fuck, when Karloff, when he first takes the bandages off.
It's funny, but it's
so
not
bad
supposed to be.
And it's funny because you feel so bad for him, because you're like, dude, you're fucking Frankenstein again, man. And it's literally what they're going for. They're trying to play off that sympathetic character and sell it like that too. And I think they do a good job.
But the difference between Frankenstein and this one is he actually becomes the hero in this one.
Yeah. Well, because he never wanted to do it from the start, right? He was against the whole thing. He's like, I ain't helping you, man. He's like, I just want to I just want to get the fuck out of here and go on with my life.
Yeah.
Didn't work out that way.
Yeah, but is he sympathetic? Wasn't he fucking...
He was a killer, too.
Criminal doing... That, okay.
Yeah.
That's my whole thing with this movie.
They give the idea that it stemmed from, like, being bullied, essentially, and, like, not, like, being able to be himself.
Yeah, his path of life
but
was...
he's wanted.
Yeah,
right. I mean, I'm not
not
justifying it. I'm just saying, like, he grows. You get the sense that he, probably didn't deserve the path that he was.
Well, they talk about that. Like, he basically was on that path of destruction because of all the bullying and stuff that he had, which is kind of interesting too. That they actually incorporate bullying, which is a huge thing nowadays. And they actually talk about how the bullying made him an angry person, and if it wasn't for the bullying, he wouldn't have been the way he was and stuff, because he reacted to it like with violent tendencies and stuff, and it kind of led him in, on down that path of destruction, down that rabbit hole of destruction. And so you feel bad for him in that sense. I mean, yeah, he definitely did some shit that he probably shouldn't have, but you're also focusing on why he ended up down that rabbit hole. And then when he gets blackmailed basically into doing what he's doing, not really blackmailed, kind of forced, kind of tricked into what he was doing, what he was supposed to do, you feel bad for him, because he was just there for a face change, man. Come on. Just get rid of this ugly ass ball.
Well, he was there for a face change because he escaped fucking prison because he killed people. So he's a bad guy to begin with, and he's on the run, so he has to look like somebody else. It sounds like they're both bastards to me. However, he does, in the end, he has that moment of clarity.
Oh, I'm not saying that he wasn't a bad guy.
We don't really know who he killed, right? He could have killed other douchebags.
Well, it doesn't actually matter. I mean, the focus is
they make it sound like he's a fugitive on the run. That's all I know.
Yeah, he was.
That's the way it's presented.
Well, he was, but you get the sense that it's because he was.
It's because of his upbringing. He was only the way he was because of the bullies. They used to call him ugly every day, and he said he used to react to it. I guess that's a personal decision. He was
like, "Stop bullying me."
Sticks and stones and break my bones. But come on, but I get that. But people make their decisions.
But I think obviously, if this was real life and he was like a killer, I'd be like, fuck him too.
Well, that's
what I mean? But like in this movie, he's supposed to be like the sympathetic and becomes the hero type thing.
Well, that's the thing. If they don't give him the backstory and he's this bank robber that just fucking bucked down like 10 security guards, a woman and her fucking child, and an old granny named fucking Margaret, then you're a bastard motherfucker. But the fact that they give him this sympathetic backstory because, he became this person because of these assholes, it's justifiable. I'm not saying it's 100% correct in how everyone's going to perceive this character, but to me, it is sympathetic in the sense that like he was kind of destined to do that because of the bullying and shit. It's sad. It's sad. And people do fucked up things, man. I mean, let's face it nowadays, man. People like, the internet suicide shit is so crazy right now. People getting bullied online, and like, I personally don't understand how you could let shit like that bother you to the point you'd kill yourself, but that's not me. That's them. Right? I get it. But I don't.
Yeah.
But the point is like people make decisions based off of other people's reactions and the way you're treated in life and stuff like that. I get it, man, because if you've ever been offended by something, but could you imagine having that happen to you every single day of your life? Like someone's like, Dave, you know what? You're such a fucking loser because you sound like Joe Pesci.
Yeah,
and like,
but Joe Pesci's way cooler than you.
But the thing is, like,
he has more money.
But like, if you heard that every single day, they're like, why the fuck would you, like, you're an idiot. Like, if you just heard that every single day, you might snap and be like, bro.
Sure you would.
I mean, that's my point.
Dude.
Like, people are fucking
rude.
I
get it.
The people are so mean and rude and shit like that. And when it comes to the internet, let's face it, man, you don't have to be anywhere near someone to offend them. Right? Internet keyboards,
right,
people are so offended. And I think that's part of the problem with people, though, too, is they can't react to it because you technically can't. You don't have that personal interaction. Like if someone called you a name to your face in the real world, you're going to have it out right there. It's probably going to be settled. But on the internet, they can just keep fucking doing that. Type. Those little cat those little cat fucking memes. and they're doing that constantly to you. Like you can't do anything. Like, what do? You say some words back? Like it doesn't solve anything. It makes you probably feel shittier. I get that whole shit, man. I mean, I personally am very, very strong.
Unfriended.
Yeah, I'm very, very strong when it comes to like all that type of shit. Like I never let anything bug me at all. I'm just like, fuck, I don't give a fuck what people think. No, because
maybe when I was young though.
You learn from it, man. Like the early days of YouTube. Oh yeah, you get some hate comments. You're like, fuck, man. And you think about it. You're like, oh fuck. But I used all that shit, and I was like, bro, nothing bugs me. You can say anything you want to me. It doesn't bother me.
Right.
I'm going to keep doing shit. I don't care. Like if you don't agree with my opinion, it's fine because it's my opinion. You don't have to. Right?
Word.
Right. It's no one told you had to agree with me. Like fuck, you don't whatever. But
they're not paying my bills. What the fuck would I care? That's
right,
what I say.
Right. It just doesn't
my bills. What I care what you think.
Just doesn't affect me, man. Doesn't affect me, but
yeah, and you shouldn't. But kids are kids. The whole thing with minds not being developed enough yet, and being at you got fucking teen angst and you have hormones. That's a different age. I could completely understand what happens in those cases.
I was actually just thinking about this the other day because I was watching a video and Buddy was saying that he went to school with this girl and she actually just jumped in front of a train like last week.
Aww.
And it was all because of online bullying. And I was thinking to myself going, shit, man. So
what a shitty way to go.
She was like 20 years old. She was like 20 years old or something like that or whatever. So she was bullied all through high school and then just, whatever. So she was born in like, early 2000s, right? And I'm thinking to myself going, you know what? It makes a lot of sense because a lot of these people that grew up in this era of technology don't really have that personal interaction that, like me and you did, Dave, because we're older than JP.
Right.
Like we're like from like 3 different generations here. But me and you grew up always dealing with people. And then when it came to the internet age and the digital age, we still could interact with people like, we could differentiate between the two and deal with it differently.
Though, dude, I missed a lot of the internet age. Like I graduated in 2010. So it was like the very end. Like I don't even know if Facebook just started, I think, when I graduated, Well,
Facebook has been around since about the mid 2000, like 2005, something like that.
Well,
I think it started.
But like 2008.
Or 2008, something like that.
2008. Yeah. So it was like just start,
right.
It was, I didn't spend my whole, childhood on Facebook, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I could see where people get like that nowadays, but like, it's just unfortunate. You wish that there was like a way to explain to these people, like, dude, you're taking a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Nobody gives a fuck about this. No. Nobody gives a fuck about anybody that you went to high school with. When you're like think about it now. Like, how often do you think of any of the people you went to high school with? Like,
I think about them, but I also know what they became. Because the reason I think about them is because when I had my Facebook opened, my other account, I would see people that I went to high school with and saying, okay, this guy and this girl and these people were this in high school, and this was their clique. Look at them now, and look what this person turned out to be, and look at this and this. And it's just, and I've been hammering this to my daughter since she's been young enough to, the age where I think she could comprehend where I'm, especially she's 16 now, just turned 16. I'm like, listen, whatever happens now, in 10 years isn't going to even matter.
It does not matter. Like, you used to be so obsessed with, like, or a lot of people would be obsessed with, like, what other people thought, or, like, what so-and-so in school, but now, like, I honestly, there's some people I don't even recognize that I went to high school with that I saw every day and talked to every day. You know what I mean? So it's like, it just sucks. Like, you wish you could, like, let people know, like, look, this shit is not gonna matter, and them actually believe. Like, you wish you could actually show it to them.
Right. You do, especially when you have a kid, because there's nothing like that feeling of having a child. And when you are a parent, the worst thing you could think of is somebody hurting your child in any fucking way. It's worse than them hurting you. And that's what I always tell her. She's like any other kid. She goes through different things, and she's the 16-year-old girl now. So it's not going to get, probably going to get a little worse before it gets better. I don't know, but I mean, she's 16. We don't know, but it's just like you try to convey to them, hey, listen. And you hope they believe you. But I remember when I was 16 and what my parents told me, a lot of it was in one ear and out the other. And I try to be as hip as I can and being able to, because I still feel like a kid in many respects. So I think that my daughter, I could be completely fucking off base here, but I don't think that my daughter looks at me the way I looked at my father when I was her age. I just don't. I think I'm a lot of so. I really don't. So, but I don't know.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. I think that also, like kids are such savages, dude. The kids that I grew up with, man.
Well, the world allows it to be, because it's just so easy to be by yourself in a room calling someone a motherfucking cocksucker cunt, where you wouldn't have that type of shit in real life. Like, it's so simple, dude. And that's the problem, is that there's no fucking filter when you're fucking with people on the internet and shit, and people take that shit serious. And it's like you never had someone go, oh, you're a fucking cunt. Like, that shit never happened, man. Like, you were fighting if that happened.
Right.
It's a totally different world that we live in and stuff. But it is interesting. Like, I don't think my kid looks at me like I looked at my family.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, the thing, I'm still like a big kid. Like, I still dress like I'm fucking like 13, right? I still act like it. It's like, I mean, I'm still responsible, but it's like I don't act like how I was raised. It's like at all. Right. But yeah, I know it's different. It's different. But you try to give them the best you can.
People go from 0 to 100. Like that on the internet. That never happens in real life. I mean, there's a couple of hotheads you're out drinking in a bar, and some guy's got to swing his big dick around some girls and go, "You don't know who you're fucking with, man." I mean, you see that at clubs sometimes. Oh yeah. But usually,
I feel like it's even more rare these days. Like, I feel like people just don't act like that out in public.
No,
at least
you don't see it as often, man. Well, when I was growing up, man, like when I was late 90s, early 2000s, 19, 20, 21, like to go to the club and not see 4 or 5 fights in a night was pretty unusual. Especially where I come from. Like, I come from a pretty, like a small city, 100,000. Oh, it wasn't 100,000 people back then, but say like 80, 85,000 people. But it's very, there's a lot of redneck. There's a lot of fucking different types of people, and people will tell you that you're a different motherfucker. Like, growing up being a hip hop kid and like dressing the way I did and stuff, like you would have other, like the Cowboys would be like, they would call you every fucking name in the book, like the straight up N word, the W word, like everything, every five, just because you listened to hip hop meant you wanted to be black.
Right. Man, we don't have any of that.
Well, I blew some motherfucker's mind one time, and this fucking hillbilly fuck was like, he kept calling me the N word, man. I was like, and I was just staring at him. I'm like, bro, I'm like, you do realize, you listen to rock music? Yeah, I listen to rock music. So I guess that makes you the wigger now. Because I'm like, who do you think invented rock music? Motherfucker had no idea what to say to me.
He didn't know.
He's staring at me going, like, what is this cracker talking about?
Cracker.
And I'm like, bro, you do realize, man, and that was the end of that shit.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Everyone was like staring at me going, wow, you like silenced that shit, man. And I just did it calmly. It was one of the greatest moments. I was like, bro, I was like, whatever, man, you can call me the fuck you wanted to, but you got to understand the whole logistics here, man. There's a bigger picture to what you're trying to insult me. And it was just because, like, yeah, I listen to hip hop, so that means I want to be black.
Dude, I was even worse though, because I used to walk around with the fucking medallion around my neck because that was in style.
Dude, I'm 42. I'm 42, and I still.
That Eminem talks about in that song. He goes, not even knowing that we were being laughed at. You ain't even half black. You ain't supposed to.
Let me get that. Let me have that. Yeah.
I still walk around rocking this big chain. Look at this thing, and this is actually a real chain too. People like look at it like, is that thing real? I'm like, actually, it is. But it's like I don't have the big medallion on it, but. You know, it's a big ass fucking chain.
I used to have a flame clock around my neck. I used to have a fucking fake gold that I got from Spencer's around my neck.
Dude, that's amazing. That's amazing.
That's
amazing. That's amazing.
So I had to put up with my shit, but that was a whole different time. I mean, like literally, let's say there's 360 people in my fucking class and like 1,000 in the high school. Yeah. We're going so far back that less than 20 listen to rap music at all, and I was one of them. Just think about how much.
Yeah, see, I came from an area where it was, you know, it was different. If I was down south in Vancouver, it was a totally different scene, right? But where I was, it was the majority. Like you were in the huge minority, right? There was like a community of people. Sure. We used to do these shows, DJ, freestyling, put on these shows at the skate parks and stuff, and it was always the same people around town that would come to them. But it was great because it was like, you know, it was this community of people that understood what was going on and stuff, but. It was small. It was very, very small in the 90s, which is kind of surprising considering when you look back on it, like that was the golden age of music and like the shit was so good between 88 and like 95 and
indeed.
It's looking back bigger, but
yep.
Sidetracked.
Yeah.
The Raven.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not as high as you guys because I think they started some things in the plot and they just didn't follow it up right. But again, you guys might just disagree, and that's kind of my knock on the film. Like, I thought it was going to be about this guy had a crush on this girl, but the guy came to his house and said, my daughter has developed a fondness for you. Mm-hmm. So I thought this whole thing was going to be, and then when he hired the guy to kill, I thought he was hiring him to kill the father so he could be with the girl who also wanted to be with him. Then all of a sudden, they kind of abandoned that in the third act, and it just became about him torturing people. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought your whole motivation was because you wanted to be with this girl because you think she's attractive, and you hear that she's attracted to you, and they completely dropped that gimmick. And I was like, it just seems like it didn't stick the landing in that respect to me. It became a different movie. Not a bad movie, but I just think that, like, it started off one way and went somewhere else, and I just wish they would have, to get where they wanted to go, I wish they would have got us there taking a different route as the way it began. It just kind of had me scratching my head a little bit. Mm-hmm. Was my issue. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but that's what I was expecting.
I think it's sort of just his like madman nature takes over once he starts getting into the, like, I think initially it was just about like the girl, but I think like, you know, once the ball starts rolling, his like Poe inspiration comes full effect.
I think it was just easier to not do, like, not to like subject everybody to the torture, and I feel like he just at that point he just kind of fucking lost his mind. I don't know, but I do get what you're saying though, because like she was interested in him, but I'm not sure if she was completely like on the same like she was interested in him, but I don't know if she was interested in the point of like leaving her fiance or husband. Is it fiance? I think she wasn't married, or husband, whatever.
It was a
fiance. Yeah, so
but there was never a scene between the two of them. There was not one scene after what happened. She came, and it seemed like he was flirting a little bit with her. She goes, you can have any. I forgot, because she was grateful, and he was coming on to her a little bit, and at first it looked like she was rejecting it, but then she seems like he went home, developed this crush on him, wanted to be with him. The guy told him. Then when they all come to the house, there was not one single scene of her expressing any type of feeling towards him at all, and I think it would have served.
That's a fair point. Like,
no, it is.
At first,
it is.
Like in my own head, I was thinking like, okay, well maybe it like has this, like a lot of times like patients fall in love with the doctor that saved their lives, type of thing, but they don't really expand upon any of it.
But maybe
like
that's why. But maybe that's
it's
why.
So damn short.
He recognizes that she's not showing any interest at the house, and his goal when they all got there was to kind of like, kind of steal her away and then torture the fiance and the dad. Which in reality, if you kill them off, you think she's going to be in love with you, kind of thing. And it doesn't really. But maybe he recognizes that she's not really showing the interest personally at the house, and he's like, fuck this. He's flipping the script. And he's just going to be like, we're torturing everybody now. We're just going to go through with this shit, and we're just going to let it's not even about her anymore because she didn't show that affection personally. And I think maybe that's what's implied there. That's the way I kind of took it. Just to explain that away a little bit.
I just wish we would have got a little bit of screen time devoted to it.
Right. It's definitely not touched upon on screen.
Right.
I'm not saying I don't like the movie. I like the movie.
Right.
I'm not going to be as high as you guys, and that's like one of my. There was a couple instances where to me they kind of dropped the ball in the narrative just a little bit. Like I didn't understand why the guy said he was so ugly. Boris Karloff, when he came to him, just looked like a fucking guy with a beard.
Right.
They should have.
That was a little. They should have maybe.
He should have looked the way he looked after the operation to start with, and then made him look worse.
Well, that would have been.
I couldn't understand why fucking the guy is a wanted man. They said he was like a fucking fugitive, right?
Yeah.
The guy's name is Bateman. Why would he call him Bateman in front of all the people that are there? I thought he was going to give him away. They're going to go, oh, Bateman, you know who that is? But that never happened.
Yeah, he's American Psycho.
Right.
But like, if I was Lugosi and he's like, yo, man, you need to change my face, man. I'm so damn ugly. I've been bullied my whole life and shit. I need a face change and shit. If I was Lugosi, I'd have been like, here's a razor. Shave your face.
Yeah, I think you have to use your imagination on that one a little bit.
I know, but I'm just saying. And then he goes, it'll be a 10-minute operation.
Right. But no, it is a valid point. And like watching that shit too, I'm just like, man, I tell you, they definitely flipped the script here. And I think it's just the only way you could ever justify
what you were saying in the first review about how these films like are edited where there's pieces missing.
Yeah,
it's like
there's definitely a piece missing there.
Full picture all the time.
Right. It's true, man.
Which is probably why I don't love them. Which is probably why to this day I haven't seen a movie before the year of 1950 that I've given a rating of an 8 or higher. 8's as high as I've gone on any of the Universal classics. I enjoy them. I just don't. There's always a little.
Have you ever seen Phantom's Carriage?
Holy fuck, it's so funny you say that. Yesterday, we got into this whole conversation on Exploding Heads about it because of the Top 100 show coming up. And I said, there's some movies I haven't seen that I like to see. And I said, The Phantom Carriage. And Christian didn't even know what I was talking about. And we kept making jokes about him. And like Christian was calling it the wrong name. He was calling it fucking Baby Carriage of Doom or some shit. He forgot what it was, but he didn't know what it was.
Dude.
But yes, I plan on seeing that for this year.
What about Cabinet of Dr. Caligari?
And that also came up, and I am going to watch that.
Okay, because like those are two that I actually because I don't have a lot that are above 8 either. 8's usually like my max, but there are a few such as those two that I'm higher than an 8 on.
I definitely
The Phantom Carriage. I've got it at a 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
See,
man.
I remember you saying that. I remember you guys reviewing it and blowing the movie. I'm like, well, wait a minute. So
it's good.
Because I'm coming up with my top 100, I'm like, well, I only owe it to myself. There's maybe like, a dozen movies that I feel that as a horror fan I must see before I can make a concrete 100. And those are two of them right there that we literally talked about yesterday. So it's so funny. Yeah.
Right.
We're doing that.
Okay. Yeah, because those are two that silent films that I think like when and I went into especially Cabinet of Dr. Caligari like thinking like, oh, this is just like, it's going to be good, but it's like how good can it be as 100 years old? You know what I mean? But then I was like, wow, this is actually good for like today. Like the story's good. Like it's atmospheric, it's creepy, it's like it's a good movie.
And I heard you guys talk. You guys all loved it. I'm like, well, I got to see this fucking movie. There's no question, and I will. And there's one more thing about this movie that bugged me a little bit. It's more of a funny thing, but the guy comes up through the fucking trap door in their bedroom, right? The wife tells the fucking husband about it. Rather than investigate and see if there's a fucking trapdoor in the room, he just gets rid of his wife and puts her in some other room. Who the fuck would do that?
Well, you got to remember, Dave. Back in the 30s, women's opinions didn't matter. You know what I mean? You just like, oh.
But you're also, but you're in the room too. So if you know that somebody could come up through a trap door in the room, aren't you going to look for a trap door?
Yeah,
but
most likely.
I don't know. A little bit. Again, I'm not trying to knock the film. I'm just telling you why. These are the reasons why I'm not going to be quite as high. I can't
factual.
help it.
I thought the same thing when watching it. I was just like,
yeah. I mean, that again, just like I said, though, it's like I feel like there's certain things that you just have to like almost just kind of accept in these movies because like it's because they're so short. They don't have those parts in them. Like there should be a part there to distinguish,
right? There should,
the relationship between that was potentially going to happen and why it didn't happen and stuff. But instead of like going from one scene where she's digging to all of a sudden like, oh, he's going to fucking torture everybody.
I also think there was just a general like mindset of like people didn't question stuff back then because like you got to remember like cinema had only been around like 20 years, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
like in the theater, to be able to go see these things. And it's like I think people were just like didn't really expect things to be like perfectly executed like we do now, where it's like if that happened in a modern movie, right, we'd be like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna look to see if there's a trap door. So but it's I think just the general like filmmakers just didn't like think about stuff like that.
That's not. It's just something you have to get past, and maybe it's easier for some than others. But we're so used to watching all the stuff we've grown up watching that you just like Italian horror. People can say, well, Italian horror, it doesn't have to make sense because of this and this, and you either go with it or you don't. Some people are okay with it. Some people can't watch giallos because they don't like the way they wrap up sometimes, and you hear complaints about them. I guess, Well,
I can see that actually happening in a giallo, where there's a trap door and someone didn't question it. Like
people have no patience. That's the problem. That's the problem with people, and when they don't like giallos, they don't have the patience, man. Giallos are just murder mysteries. It's just the whole movie's a build up towards
the world of them.
There's
some that are great.
Yeah, there's just the whole movie premise is just a build up to a reveal, right? And the reveal is kind of what separates the good from the bad ones.
I think a lot of people's problems is like there's a lot of shit that just is too convenient or doesn't make sense a lot of times. Like if you really pay attention to some giallos, you could pick those fuckers apart.
Oh, absolutely. But there's other mystery movies, like not even like if we're talking about, just general mysteries and thrillers and things. There's parts in those movies too that there's always shit in those movies that kind of like is meant to throw you off a little bit. It's just the way those movies are done, right? I get it though, like the convenience shit and those certain elements of giallos, but the thing I like about giallos versus like your general kind of mystery thriller and stuff is that giallo has that total exploitation element to it that I love. It's very sleazy. I love the music in those movies. They have a little bit more elements that I like to your general mystery thriller kind of murder mystery. So
I love the style of them. I love the Italian movie style personally. Yeah. And I actually, even the dubbing is part of its charm for me. Like I enjoy the feeling I get watching them. I'm like, oh yeah, I like this stuff. It's like it's comfort food in a way, Right. Yeah. So, but some people complain about it while others embrace it. And again, I can still watch a movie like this one and say I enjoy the good things about it, but sometimes it's hard for me. That's why I said 8's the highest I've given an older movie, because I always end up having these little, like my biggest complaint of all, and I say this all the time, is how quickly people fall in love and get married in old movies. Like immediately, all the fucking time. It's like the worst trope of old cinema.
I feel like that's how it happened back then, though.
Like, you think? I don't know. I should have.
Yeah, dude. Like, I remember, like, my friends, like, grandparents, they were, like, old as shit. And they like went on one date and got engaged like the next day and got married like right after he came back from like the war. You know what I mean?
Maybe there's something to this. I don't know. Shit.
That's a little extreme. Damn.
Yeah. Maybe it was common. Who knows? Maybe he's right.
All right.
No, it definitely was common, dude. It for sure was. You read about it all the time.
Oh, well, it was also common
dates.
to get engaged and shit when you were 16, 17 years old and get married and shit. Like, it's pretty unheard of nowadays. But, I mean, it was common back in those days. It's just the way it happened, right? And then they would stay together.
Well, I mean, most
that's why our grandparents
were married,
would
had a kid, owned a house, and, all that by the time they were, 19, 20.
Yeah, and that's why, our grandparents and great-grandparents and shit would have, their 70th fucking wedding anniversary because they got married so fucking young.
Right?
It's like, you would never see that now. It's crazy, man. So do you guys have anything on the Raven? Anything else you guys want to talk about?
I believe it's my turn to go first.
Yep.
I'm coming in even though Dave did point out some stuff that I had subconsciously thought about, but just chalked it up to old movie. But it is valid. It is valid. So it didn't quite hurt my rating, but it definitely made me think a little bit more. But I'm still coming in at 8.
That's my mentality with these movies, and I explained it away in the first one too. Is there's definitely things that are just missing, and having that mentality from watching these movies multiple times and stuff, I guess I'm a little bit more forgiving and accepting of those things. Where one scene you can have this person doing this, and the next scene this is happening. I'm just like, that's the product of the 68-minute movie right there. It's missing a fucking key moment. But I'm like, but I've watched so many of these movies. I grew up watching a lot of old Universal, just black and white movies in general. And I think I'm just accustomed to the simplicity of the movies in a sense of the running time, right? They really kind of, they simplify the running time, 65, 70-minute movies, where nowadays, even 2-hour movies, sometimes you'd be like, oh, well, you probably could have done that a little bit better too. It's just the way things are done are just so different. But then again, if these are first time watches and stuff, Dave, those are valid points for sure. But I think if you watch them over time, you're like, it's a little bit more forgiving. It really is. I'm not saying it should be, but I'm just saying that's just the way it is with me. But I really, really like the characters. Bela Lugosi is fantastic in this movie. He's so fucking evil. I love the Poe inspiration, where it's not a direct adaptation to the Raven story. They show the Raven and stuff, but he's just a Poe fanatic, and that's so cool. And it's fun. It's fun. The ending's crazy. And 8 out of 10 for myself. Yeah.
Right on. Okay, well, I was okay with it. Despite what I said, there was still some good stuff. I really enjoyed the Poe stuff. Actually, this discussion kind of made me look at a few things differently as well. And the performances were good, and Bella was pretty great. So I'm 6.5.
Okay, so that is The Raven from 1935.
A ray from this nebula will be caught here and electrically transferred to the projector in my laboratory.
From Andromeda?
750,000 light years distant.
All right, so getting into the third film here on episode 226. From 1936, we have The Invisible Ray. Now, this one right here was a first-time watch for me, like I mentioned off the top of the show, I think. And I assumed it was also for you guys also, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they all were.
Yeah, this one right here, kind of interesting. It's kind of like a mashup of sci-fi and horror and almost man, if you wanted to go right out on a limb, man, it has almost slasher elements to it, man. This dude is on a revenge tale, taking out people one by one. I know it's going really far, but people are like, you're fucking crazy, but it's kind of true though, man. This guy's hunting down people one by one. But anyways, quick little synopsis. A scientist becomes murderous after discovering and being exposed to the radiation of a powerful new element called Radium X. So I really like the premise to this movie here. I think it's actually quite interesting. Basically, Boris Karloff is well, you guys guessed it, doctor.
Scientist.
He's a doctor. He's a scientist. And so he invents this telescopic type thing that can basically see into the past. It's like a telescope that can kind of see into the past. And what he discovers is that there was like this, like a meteor or something that crashed into Africa, like way back in the day, like in the dinosaurs, like 500 million years ago, whatever. Anyways, he notices this when he's looking up in the sky and shit like that. And he's like, well, we need to go investigate this. So he basically gets a whole crew together and they go over to Africa to go and find whatever crashed over there and stuff. And they end up finding this new element called Radium X, and he gets exposed to it, which ultimately kind of poisons him. It basically poisons him. It makes him glow. And the unfortunate thing is, like, when he touches something, it actually dies. So Lugosi, who is actually a doctor himself, comes up, he figures out like an antidote for him, and he basically, Boris Karloff's character has to basically take this antidote, daily to suppress the poison that's in his system so he can, able to touch things and stuff like that. But what happens is Lugosi's character actually kind of, and his crew kind of, I would say, what's the appropriate word? Not disrespect, but they kind of cheat him a little bit. And he finds out about it, and he decides that, well, fuck these people. I'm going to go out on a murderous rampage and start taking them out one by one. So it's kind of an interesting premise for like 1936. Like, a lot of slasher films have the same premise. When, somebody is done wrong, they come back on a murderous rampage, revenge type story. It's pretty much the exact same thing. It really is. Proto slasher?
Yeah.
I'm calling it, man. It's like a proto slasher, man, just done differently, but almost the exact same. I mean, he is infected, which is kind of cool. And like, this is the type of movie, again, I think if you had a remake on this shit, you could probably do this pretty cool. Maybe it has been remade. I don't know. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of cool elements to this movie. I think its main problem, which I never thought I'd even mention in a show like this, its running time is too long.
Yeah, I know.
Right, I agree. Especially when you're used to the other three, right? Like this one, it's like stands out, and you feel like there's less story in this one to carry this type of thing. I do like the opening scroll that says basically like every like major like technological like scientific advancement when it was first theorized was laughed at, and basically saying like this could happen too. You know what I mean? I thought that was cool, but yeah, it is a little too long.
Well, what happens is it's got this really good opening sequence where, I love the stuff with the, the space and, the telescope and figuring out, seeing into the past and then finding the Radium X and like all that stuff is really cool. But then the whole middle of the movie is just kind of like lacking. And like, it's kind of cool because Karloff's character, his mom is blind, and he cures his mother's blindness with this new element. But on the flip side, Lugosi's doing the same thing, but he doesn't really say anything. He kind of takes some radium from this crash site and stuff, and then he starts using it to his advantage and making money and curing people and stuff. And I don't know, man. Like, but that the whole middle part of the movie, like that, there's a section of it that's actually really kind of boring. It just kind of drags and drags and drags, and then the end is kind of funny. Like, and I will say, this movie right here actually has special effects. I know they filmed this movie in like a few weeks, but they spent most of the time in post-production actually doing these effects that are so primitive now, right? It's basically just, it's like an overlay of, making him glow and things like that. But I will say, like, the end of this movie, which I don't want to really give away, but it has a character jumping out of a window and kind of exploding and stuff. I'm just thinking to myself, like, it's like the original hilarious dummy death without the dummy, right? It's kind of funny to me, but I don't know. I think the effects at the time were actually not bad. I thought the space stuff was actually done really well. It looks good. It actually looks pretty fucking good for 1936. Like, I won't lie, but it's just the middle part of the movie. It's kind of bland. I do like the
drags a bit.
I do like the diabolicness of Karloff's character, where he actually fakes his own death. He kills off somebody else by burning them up and shit like that, which isn't shown, but he fakes his death, which he knows is going to make the papers, and they read the papers and they're like, oh shit, he's dead. So then when their members of their crew start dying off, he's like, well, I mean, it can't be him, kind of thing. It's like, it's kind of cliched stuff, but I don't know. This one right here has a great premise, is not executed perfectly. I do enjoy the third act a little bit. And the body count, there's like a body count in this movie. Like he kills like 5 people or something. That's pretty crazy, actually. I think it's probably the biggest body count. But Dave, I see you putting up your arms. What are your thoughts on this one?
Okay, well, what you said about the premise, I agree with, definitely. Everything. To hear Moodz describe it the way he did at the beginning about it's essentially like a proto slasher and this and that, all that sounds so much more interesting, and the premise than what we actually get on camera. Like, I'm kind of gonna pull like a Jeremy here and tell you right off the bat that I don't have a lot to say because I was basically bored almost throughout. I liked the beginning, I liked the climax. Everything in between, I just kept checking out, man. Even though it was an hour and 20 minutes, it felt like it was 2 hours. I was just I just couldn't get into it when it got started. I liked the FX. I like when he was glowing, and I liked the killing, and I liked the other stuff.
The dog death.
Yeah, and when he blasted that rock when those guys are all there and it melted in the desert, that stuff was cool. I liked the character of his mother. She was cool. But those fucking newspapers every 5 minutes coming up, the newspaper is the narrative constantly, and I just fell out of it. I was just bored.
I know.
It's so weird to say.
Isn't it funny,
movie,
too?
I was.
Like in 1936, where you're going to use like the old silent days,
They actually do that in the next movie too. With
yeah, once or twice, but not fucking like 20 times like in this movie.
Yeah, it's like the newspaper literally was part of the. Yeah, I know that kind of it kind of took me out of it too, man. It's taking it back to the silent days. That's what they used to do. Remember, in between shots, they would cut to the dialogue and they would give you an explanation, kind of thing. But
and show a spinning paper.
Yeah, I don't know how much you guys heard before I cut out there, but I was talking about the effects and like how. Did you guys hear me talk? Did I mention like how the dummy death was like the end would have been?
That's actually what you were talking about.
Okay, so
it was a dummy death without seeing the dummy.
Right? Without the dummy. But like the effect, I will say like the effects for 1936 actually were pretty decent. I mean, it was still effective in what they were doing and stuff. But yeah, like I think the beginning of this film is strong, and I think the end is okay. But like the whole middle part of this movie is just it's pretty boring actually. Like it really is. Like I don't know, man. Again, it's choppy even at 80 minutes, like Karloff basically fakes his death and it's all kind of shown to you in a newspaper. Like you don't really get any of that stuff. And it's just unfortunate because it doesn't seem very good.
I think the premise is like the best part. Like I like the idea of like, oh, we're able to look back in time. Like the sci-fi element's awesome. See that this meteor landed over here. Okay, let's go to Africa and look for it. Okay, we found it. Okay, it has, who would have guessed, bad effects. You know what I mean? It's not good. And then the glowing thing, that like the way they do the effects is fine. I don't think it's like amazing or anything. I think like Invisible Man was like better in terms of effects, but it's still pretty interesting. I like the whole sci-fi aspect of it, and there's a few moments in it, like the dog thing, where I was like, and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm with Dave. I was kind of bored with this one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the middle part of this movie is you find yourself checking out like hardcore on it, man. I think a better movie would have been just them looking through the telescope and just figuring out all this shit that happened in the past and stuff. Like that's probably the more interesting, like 80 minutes of that right there.
I rewound that like 3 times. I didn't understand. I'm like, what did he say? How is this happening? So like at the beginning of the movie, I had to rewind like fucking 3 times.
Yeah. You made it even longer for yourself.
Well, because it's an interesting premise. I did,
but I wanted to know. I was like, what's going on here exactly? How is this happening? And then maybe that did fuck up the experience. But I'm just glad that I'm not alone in this boat. I thought I was going to be like the only one that said it was like boring, Yeah,
the overall premise is definitely the strongest part here, but the execution, it just really is not there, man. It really isn't there. There's not even a lot of like, like when he's on his rampage, when he's going after the whole crew and stuff like that, it doesn't even come across as being that. It's not even that thrilling. There's not even that much to it, just things are happening and we're not really seeing anything. I mean, really, there's unintentional funny moments when he touches the dog and the dog just drops and dies. It's shit like that, man. It's like ridiculous. But I mean, they do shoot around. Like, it's not just done on sound sets either, right? Like, they're obviously shooting in certain parts and stuff, and which is kind of interesting. So the movie itself does feel a little bit bigger at times, but at the same time, it's actually quite boring. And I hate using that adjective, but it is kind of true though, man. It's not that exciting. But I will say though, like, Karloff in this movie looks completely different. Again,
yeah,
you know, the look on him is his hair and just the way he looks and stuff is like completely different. But I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot to really say, but there's not really much to say about it without, you know, kind of spoiling the whole thing. If people really
I wish
watching
more time. Sorry, go ahead, Jimmy.
This movie was like very successful at the box office in terms of like the money that it made, but the fact that they spent way too much money on the budget like completely made it a failure for Universal.
Yeah.
It actually did well in terms of the numbers that it brought in if the budget wasn't so high, but this film had a $166,000 budget, and then they went $68,000 over budget,
and that was for the effects that they had to put on it too, right?
Yeah.
And making it look like they were in Africa, different sets they had to do and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they probably spent a little more with that, and I wish that they would have spent a little more time on the whole relationship with the girl and where that went with that guy. That would have actually been more interesting if done the right way, to have more of a human element than just a simple, this happening, these guys screwed him over, and here we go, and we got newspapers. I don't know. It could have figured in more. Like, the stuff with the mother was cool. There was a little heart to it. You cared about the mother. I did. I thought she was cool. I like what the resolution with her at the end and what she was saying to him, and even in the beginning. Like, it seems like usually I want to see more of the killing and more of this stuff, but for some reason I think I would have enjoyed it more if they spent a little more time on the interactions with the mother and the love interest. But I don't know. I'm just trying to find something different than what I got.
I mean, considering he did cure her blindness, right? And then where the resolution goes to, if you had built up that relationship and that character a little bit more, probably would have been a little bit more effective too, right? Because it's something that, you know, as a parent, you wouldn't really want to have to do.
No.
So you could create, something else from there, but. Yeah, I don't know. This one right here is just, it is what it is, man. I don't think it's horrible by any means. I don't think it's great by any means either, but it is pretty average, though, in my opinion.
Yep.
If I had to rate it, I'm definitely coming in at like a 5 out of 10 on this one. I don't think it's like, it's terrible, but I don't think it's high at all. It is boring.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm a 5 as well. Yeah.
I gave it a little bit higher. I came in at a 6, but I don't disagree with 5.
Okay, well, that's The Invisible Ray from 1936.
Recently, newspapers and magazines everywhere carried an amazing story. Reporters saw Dr. Manly Hall hypnotize actor Lugosi to give reality to a scene in Black Friday. Horror-struck, they witnessed the hypnotized actor's mortal agony as Lugosi actually experienced the terror of suffocating to death in a closet.
Let me out, please! I'm suffocating!
All right, so getting into the last and final film. That was just overkill, wasn't it?
There are 5 more box sets of this, so I'm sure we'll return to it sometime down the road. But and for now, the last and final of the Universal set.
There's still a bunch more. Well, there's like maybe 4 more Karloff films within the sets. 4 maybe, something like that. But yeah, so this one from 1940 called Black Friday. Now, the working title for this movie when they were filming it was actually Friday the 13th. Just a little bit of a factoid there.
Yeah, this is the first Friday the 13th horror film.
Wow, I know. It was kind of cool to see that it came up on the calendar, Friday the 13th, and I was like, how do you like that? That's cool.
Which makes sense because like Friday the 13th is also known as like a Black Friday, right? So, but yeah, could you imagine if this was actually called Friday the 13th though? Kind of crazy.
No shit.
That would have. I wonder if we would have ended up getting Friday the 13th as Friday the 13th.
That's exactly what I wanted to know.
Could have been Camp Blood.
right? Yeah. It could have been Capula, and that's what I always wondered. Like, I'm like, that's kind of crazy that maybe they wouldn't call it Friday the 13th, but it's such an iconic name.
Right.
Friday the 13th, it's just, it's crazy. All right, so again, starring Karloff and Lugosi. I think we made that clear at the beginning of the show. So,
yeah.
Synopsis: Dr. Sovak transplants the brain of a gangster into his professional friend's body to save his life, but there is a side effect that causes a dangerous split personality. Now, the thing I want to say off the top of this movie review is that this was a weird production because Boris Karloff was originally cast as the professor in this movie.
Right.
Who plays the dual role of the professor / gangster.
Gangster, yeah.
So Karloff actually turned down the role because he was afraid of the role. And this is like out of the director's mouth. He didn't want to do the role because he wasn't sure on how to like kind of separate the characters and do them properly. And my theory is it may have something to do with maybe his accent. I have no idea. I'm not 100% sure. And where Bela Lugosi was actually cast originally as Karloff's character in the film, which he plays the doctor. So when Karloff decided that he didn't want to do the dual role, he went into Lugosi's role of the doctor, and Lugosi got bumped down to playing the small little gangster role in this film, which he's totally miscast. This is what I was referring to.
Yeah.
In the beginning of the film, because he's supposed to be playing an American gangster, but he's not even trying to do an American accent. He's literally like Hungarian fucking, like, it's just so miscast. It's unbelievable. It's really kind of disturbing. This movie actually doesn't have any scenes with Karloff and Lugosi together in the movie. They're in the same film, but they don't have any scenes together, which is unfortunate because their presence together is always really good. But again, Lugosi's character is just so ridiculous in this movie. It's so unbelievable. It's unfortunate. Like, Karloff is good as the doctor in the film. I think he's really, really good. But again, Black Friday is billed as a Karloff Lugosi film, and at the end of the day, Stanley Ridges is the whole movie. He plays the dual personality. He's so good in this.
So in the special features on this, it seemed more as if Karloff did not want to play a gangster role at that age that he was, I guess.
Right.
Because he was in Scarface as a gangster.
Yeah, he was in Scarface, yeah.
So
no, he was more scared about him not being able to do the characters completely separate, right? Because the professor, like when Stanley Ridges is playing the professor, he is such a different character than he is as the gangster. Like, it's unbelievable. It's like night and day. He looks different. He sounds different. His demeanor's different. Oh, yeah. His diet, like everything. He does a great job. And like, if I had to break down some of the most underrated roles of all time, this has got to be one of them. Stanley Ridges fucking kills this movie. He makes this entire movie so well.
I feel like I would rather still have had it one of the two, though.
Of course, but it didn't be. But honestly,
I don't think they could. I don't think they could do it as well. And I know we've been talking great about Karloff, especially, and the things that these guys can do. I don't think that they'd be able to pull it off the way this guy did.
See, I
just don't.
I think that Karloff could have pulled it off if he was playing a British gangster. But no, but I'm being serious, because like Stanley Ridges, he's an American, where Lugosi and Karloff are not Americans, and like them trying to play an American gangster is not believable when you don't sound like an American gangster. Right? You would have to change it's called acting. You would have to change it. And like, we know actors do this all the time. They put on accents, they take off accents, and it's believable. I've seen actors before I thought that were American that turned out they weren't, because I've only ever seen them do American accents before. Like, that's called acting. And I'm not saying,
like Spider-Man.
I'm not saying they didn't have the chops, but I'm just saying, like, I think at the time Karloff was a little bit afraid that he probably couldn't do the accent properly. And Lugosi, I don't think that was his thing. Right. So they just had to go outside the box.
I mean, the way Ridges changed his look, I don't think that Lugosi, the way his face looks and the way not Lugosi, Karloff. Something about the way Ridges looks, the way he can do it, the shape of his face and his features, I think it's a lot more believable, and the voices. Mm-hmm. It's not a knock on Karloff. There are some great actors that just there's certain tricks that they can't do as well as other actors. Like I think Edward Norton would do this better than who do you think is the greatest actor in the world?
Right.
The Rock.
You know what I mean? Oh yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Edward Norton.
I'll say Willem Dafoe. I think is the greatest. He's one of my favorites. But I think Edward Norton would do better in a role like this.
Well, we've seen him do that before in the movie with what was it, Richard Gere, or the one where he plays the dual. He does a dual.
Primal Fear.
Primal Fear. And that's a great example because that's like two completely different fucking roles, right? Like. When people play dual roles in movies and are so believable in both, I'm just blown away by it. But like Stanley Ridges, he does a good job in this because like when he wakes up in bed and he's the professor and then all of a sudden he's pushing people's faces around in the back of a cab as the gangster and you're just like, that's not even the same fucking person, dude. And like, this is like 1940, man. Like he's killing this fucking role, man. It's crazy. Yeah. It's so intriguing to me. I mean, this movie's been done 1,000 times after. It might even been done before with like, the brain transplants, like the Supernatural where people switch bodies and Freaky Fridays and Black Friday. Like this type of narrative has been done 100,000 times. But and generally I don't like these narratives. I really don't like these kind of dual things when it comes to like this type of narrative. But this is really well done because it's like a brain transplant. It kind of plays into the horror element, but
it's mainly a gangster movie.
It really is. It really is not even a horror film. It just has that element of like that sci-fi kind of horror element with the surgery and stuff. Right. But the movie is it's basically a gangster kind of action type drama type thing, whatever you want to call it. But
right, it's not a Karloff Lugosi vehicle the way the other movies are.
It really isn't, man. It really isn't. Like when you see Stanley Ridges on camera, he's mostly in scenes with Karloff, but it's his movie. It's Stanley Ridges' movie. It really is. Mm-hmm. It's all about him, and it's kind of an interesting thing. But I mean, marketing's always been like that. I mean, we'll watch indie films nowadays and it'll be like, Tony
Todd.
Tony Todd or Leanne Quigley is in this, and they're in it for like 3 seconds.
Right.
Top build. Like, fuck. So, I mean, they get a fair amount. I mean, I wouldn't say Lugosi's in the film that much. Actually, Lugosi's character is actually quite, it's frustrating, man. It's really frustrating what he got downgraded to in this movie, but
yeah.
Oh, man, it just doesn't work. It's really,
what it
really
reminds
poorly
me
miscast.
There was an Abbott and Costello, one of the ones with the monsters. They did the 4 monster movies, and there was one of them where they were actually more of side characters than the leads, and I can't remember which one it was, but I did them all for a podcast for Skeleton Crew because Alex loves the fucking Abbott and Costello, and we did all the monster movies. Right. And I can't remember which one, but one of them, they were both kind of relegated to fucking smaller roles, and other people were just on the screen more. That's what this reminds me of. Mm-hmm. And I wish I could remember which one it was, but
I can't remember either.
But you guys know what I'm talking about? Do you recall?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Oh, fuck it. Well, I do like the premise of this movie. Not only does he save his friend's life with, the transplant, but like Karloff's character as this doctor figures out that, this gangster has like $500,000 hidden away in somewhere in New York and stuff. So like once he does the transplant on his buddy, well, we need to like do some healing time. Let's go to New York. Right. So it's like, it's kind of diabolic in that aspect where he's trying to get him to reveal where this money is so he can like take the money for himself kind of thing and stuff. And it's actually kind of a cool storyline. It really is. I kind of dig where it's coming from. Yeah. So, and it's a well acted movie. It's pretty well done. It's entertaining. I think this one's really, really entertaining. I just think the thing that kind of hurt, it's kind of like a gut punch to myself is Bela Lugosi's character, man. It's awful to see him miscast like this because you're just like, every time he's on the screen, you're like, oh my God, it's so bad. It's so bad. And the dialogue that he has at times, dude, is so bad too. They gave him bad dialogue, and I'm just like, oh, it's embarrassing. It's the worst part about the movie. I'm sorry. I would never really say that about Lugosi, but at least Karloff's character is like reasonable, right? He does a good job in it, and oh my god, it's so bad though.
And Lugosi, was it me, or did his accent seem thicker in this movie than the previous two that we just watched?
Maybe he was trying to do an
American.
He was trying to be American, but it was coming out worse as Hungarian.
He sounded more like Dracula here than anybody.
It's so fucking true. Like, I know there's something definitely off with it. You're right. You're right, man. It's hilarious.
Everything about it was wrong. Maybe he did it on purpose. Maybe he did it out of protest. He was like, well, fuck this. I'm going to, you know what? I don't know.
Well, that was the thing, though. That was the thing with 1940 is like, you know, and I think that was one of the biggest reasons why people always thought that Karloff and Lugosi had this, like, this undermining, like, kind of, you know, battle, like maybe they weren't right friends. Because if you look at like the history of their films and stuff, Karloff always got paid more than Lugosi in every movie. He always, like, in some cases he was getting double the money. Like, you know, Lugosi would get $5,000 for the movie.
Off.
And Karloff would, if
Dracula, bitch.
If Lugosi was getting $5,000, Karloff was getting $10,000. Like, it was, you know, they might even have the same screen time kind of thing. And it was just funny. Like, Karloff was always getting billed more. And
by the way,
Karloff
I just
is like
want to look up how much $500,000 would be after inflation today. It'd be about $10 million.
Yeah.
10 million. So
I'd go for it too.
Yeah.
Plus, the guy, he did say, he goes, if you save me, I'll give you whatever you want. Remember he said, just save me, I'll give you whatever money you want. He told him. So I think he kind of felt justified. Word.
Right.
Fuck.
Right.
I mean, I'll take $500K now, but back then, you're right. Holy shit.
But you know what? One of the most unconvincing things about the movie is, besides Lugosi's performance as the American gangster, is when they do find the money. I'm not sure how $500,000 was fitting into that little money tin. That was going to hold maybe $5,000.
$1,000 bills, dude.
But 500.
Yeah, he did say it.
But there would have to be
$1,000 bills.
They did it because they really exist, Ma. Look, $100,000, $1,000 bills.
But still, $1,000 bills. So we're looking at what, what is that? 5,000? No, 5,000 times.
No, 500. Right, $500,000 bills. So 500 are going to fit in that. 500 bills. Will they fit in that compartment? I don't know.
I've never really seen let me get 500.
It is pretty small.
I feel like 500.
It's like one of those normal kind of like.
Yeah, but ones are the fucking flimsiest. They're too big. You got to get like crisp fucking. You know, ones are so dirty and fucking. They're fat.
They expanded a little bit. Yeah.
Yes, get $100 bills if you really want to fucking and try it that way.
Yeah.
Get some rubber bands around them, gangster roll this fucker.
I guess it just seemed like it was such a small container for $500,000. I'm like, with $1,000 bills, I'm like, really, you're getting that many in there? Fuck. I don't know.
I like the bookend to this though. To the movie, like the bookends with Karloff.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Do we freeze up again?
No, I was thinking about the bookends. I was trying to fucking figure it out because my memory is awful. I know how it starts. I remember what goes on with it. I can't remember.
Well, I'm trying to stay a little bit spoiler free on this movie just because I feel like, you know, even though these movies are so old, people probably should have seen them. But then again, you guys had, like, some people just don't watch movies like this, right? So I feel like if we're talking about a movie that came out in 1984, I'm like, fuck it, man.
Honestly, I think talking about a movie that came out in 1940 is similar to talking about a film that came out in 2018.
It is.
Because nobody watches.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like 1984.
Nobody watches like the newest shit or the oldest shit.
Right? 1984. I don't feel bad about spoiling that shit. I'm like, bro, you should have seen Chud.
Right.
Go fuck yourself. You never seen Chud.
Right.
John Goodman's at the end. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, but like I still see people like that'll post something about a movie. They're like, finally getting around to this one, and it's like from like 2017, and I'm like, damn, bro, I had watched that like 4 times since then.
Right.
Right.
But like my casual viewers don't really watch like new shit as it comes out. It's usually like 3 years later they'll get to it.
It's weird. I noticed that too.
But yeah, I think this movie's pretty solid though. Definitely better than Invisible Ray. Not really a horror film, but it's fun.
Yeah, I always like this one a lot, man. I think Stanley Ridges, man, he sells the movie for me so well. I just like the whole premise, though. The brain transplant, going after money. We got gangsters involved, even though some of them aren't very convincing. But I even like the whole bar, like when they're at the chick's apartment and stuff, like where the bar is, and like this guy like knows where everything is. I just like all that shit, man.
Cigarettes in the drawer. Who keeps cigarettes in the drawer? Are the cigarettes still in the drawer?
Right. Just all the little
they
mechanics.
Go stale after a fucking couple days. Right?
Yeah, all the little mechanics and shit are really cool and stuff. It's a fun movie. It's a good watch. Again, it's really short, man. It only runs like 70 minutes, but I feel like it's kind of perfect for what it is, though. Like, there's not really a lot of shit that you need to really elaborate on, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't understay its desire, and I don't know. Kind of works.
Yep.
Yeah, I dug it.
Did he freeze? Oh, we're good?
No, I'm good. No, I didn't freeze. Stolen. All right. I don't know what that was. Fucking. I'm blaming Skype again. Kick me the fuck out of here, man. I was online buying porno when that shit. So my internet was still working. I'm telling you, man. I was buying sex toys and porno and shit, man. It's like, no, I wasn't. But yeah, Black Friday from 1940. Back to Dave?
Back to Dave.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I've said all I'm going to say. It's like you said, Stanley Ridger steals the show. He is the fucking, and the story is good enough, but it's, and again, you said they've done stuff like this before, and they have, but not quite this way. I don't know. I definitely enjoyed it. Is it really horror? No, but it's a good story. It's sci-fi-ish enough, and it's interesting. It's just cast aside your thoughts about Karl. Well, Karloff is fine, but forget about Lugosi and what he does, and go along for the ride. And I'm still okay with it. I come up. It's a 7 for me.
Yeah, I feel like I wasn't sure if they've done this type of personality switch or combination prior to 1940, but from 1940 on, they've done it 100 times. Like, we've seen these type of movies, variations of them, so many fucking times. But up to 1940, I'm not sure. I'm actually just not sure. So, if it was the first time this type of thing was done, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It's interesting. And it might, again, like, if you could go back in time and watch these movies when they came out, you'd be like, bro, that's like seeing people's reactions. Like, everyone's just so desensitized to everything now. It's like, you can't shock anybody. But some of the stuff, man, it must have been so unique. So unique. Pretty cool. I always think about that shit when I'm watching movies. Like, what was their reaction like when they were watching this shit in the cinema? They're like eating popcorn going,
right?
Oh, fuck. Really? Like, freak people out. Legitimately freak people out, man.
Shit.
JP?
I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Okay, yeah, I'm in at 7.5 out of 10. A little bit higher. I'd probably be higher, man, if Lugosi's character didn't suck so much, but
right,
it's just unfortunate.
Can't win them all.
No, it's very unfortunate. Well, after watching 3 like solid performances in 3 movies, even though Invisible Ray's not that great, but the Karloff and Lugosi are fine in the movies. They're actually really good. But to this one, it's like there's a huge separation, and it's odd. Stanley Ridges, man, he kills it.
Great.
All right, so that is going to do it for Universal Box Set Show Volume 1. Thank you, Sam, for the Patreon pick. We finally got to it. I'm sure this was like a year and a half after it was supposed to be done, maybe.
Yeah, this one was a while. But yeah, that was fun. I'm glad we got to do that. We don't really tackle a lot of like very old films, so that was fun.
Yeah, and
it's an excuse to watch them, man, for me, because I never get to watch them, and it's just like usually it ends up being for a podcast or it's Halloween time. But that's really the only time I really venture into this territory. Mm-hmm. So maybe shame on me, but I'm just glad I got to watch them.
There's 5 more box sets, so you're welcome back for those ones when we eventually get to them.
Why not, man? Yeah, shit.
I go on these kind of I wouldn't say tangents, but when I get watching older films, I stick with it. Like, I think I watched 17 Vincent Price movies recently, like in a row.
Wow.
In the middle of 94 action, huh?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty much done. I was just watching movies. But the thing is, I watched one and I was like, fuck, I want to watch another one. And I just like just rolled with it, man. I just kept watching fucking Vincent Price, because Vincent Price is my favorite actor, right? So I'll do this a lot, though. Like, I'll just start watching movies and older shit, but I've been watching a ton, man. Like, I got a bunch of other Karloff movies sitting on my table right now. I'm like, kind of got the mood for Karloff, so I'm gonna watch a bunch of other ones. But just a presence, man. I like presence. I like old presence, man. That's why I love watching old Oliver Reed movies, man, because he was either really shit-faced in every movie, or he's just, there's something about his presence, man. It's amazing. It's amazing. Just don't got guys like that anymore. There's no more Bronsons. We still have Eastwood, but he's not Eastwood. He's old. But yeah, anyways, you guys get what I'm saying. But anyways, that's going to conclude episode 226 here. 22 Shots of Movies and Horror. Thank you, Dave, for stopping by once again so we could talk about some old films. Almost spoiler free. Maybe not completely, but it was fun. It was fun otherwise. And yeah, I'm sure you'll be probably back soon again.
Yeah, Friday.
Which is 5 days from now. Actually, yeah, so the next show that's coming out, if people are still listening out there, is going to be the Top 10 of 1994, which is going to be featuring me, JP, Dave Z, Dave Parka, and Carly. And that's going to be it. So that is going to be a very, very special episode because we're going to do something a little bit different when we're picking the next year.
That's true.
So stay tuned for that. And we're really, really excited for what's going to be coming, and you guys probably will be too. So it's going to be a fun summer, I think. It's going to be a fun summer.
It'll be fun.
Right. All right, so that's going to do it, guys. We're out of here.
All right, peace out, guys.
Deuces.
Stop.